Hello and welcome to another live chat. This one will have two amazing guests joining, and they are History and Coins, and we'll be talking about haunted coins, believe it or not, and we will also have Blue Moon Sigma will be joining us very soon. And those of you that know who she is knows that she is a phenomenal researcher in the world of not only paranormal but in the world of blood, which I know sounds really stupid, but when you know what she knows, blood does make a difference, especially the Rh negative, which seems to have appeared at the same time the Anunnaki alien race bred with us humans 100,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, which was the Middle East, which just so happens is where the blood came from. Jane's already joined and wrote, "Hi everyone." Hi Jane. Looks like I've got you pretty much to myself, apart from 10 other people. So yeah, people are joining in. Now this is a fundraiser event for a boy, and I will let History and Coins explain that more when she joins in. So it's going to be up. Blue Moon's already here. Blue Moon's wrote, "Hello everyone and welcome. We'll be discussing haunted objects today with our true history and Blue Moon Sigma." I should have put that as the background text, shouldn't I? I've never. I don't think I've ever changed it from the day I ever first did it. Fraser's wrote, "Hi buddy, hi." So yes. So Philip. Blue Moon Sigma, if you would like to come on in, all you have to do is ask, uh, and History and Coins is now joined as well. So it's going to be an amazing live tonight. I'm sure they'll take your questions, no problem at all. And here comes the first person now. It's History and Coins. History and Coins is just joining now.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, History. How are you today?
Yeah, good, thanks. And Blue Moon Sigma 2's in as well, I see. So,
Yeah, she's here. She's not requested to join in yet. So I'll just wait for her to request. She might be busy or something. So if
yeah,
you could just explain, because this might go or will go on YouTube, etc. If you could just explain the GoFundMe description in the background there.
the GoFundMe description in the background that you can see is for a young boy who's got problems with his actual eyes. And what happened, he was born with an eye problem. They thought it was just, because swelling from birth, but it actually is a genetic problem he can have fixed if he goes overseas to have the medical treatment. But the parents can't afford it. His father had to give up his job to stay home and look after his son. His wife has got the other kids that she's looking after, and they are now so close. They've still got 1800 to go to get to their limit. If everybody that's on here even puts in 50 cents or $1, they'll make their limit and they'll be able to get him over there. They've got until December to get the money together, but he needs this money because his eyes aren't growing now in behind his eyelids because of the swelling, and they need to get this medical treatment done to get rid of that swelling out of his eyes, or his eyelids, so that eyes can form properly and he'll be able to see. At the moment, he can only see like a baby that is, a couple of weeks old, not like a child that's 5 months old. So he desperately needs this money.
That's amazing. That's a great cause. So, for those of you that's interested in, as history says, you don't have to fund a lot, but fundraiser is on GoFund.me and then 982.
D5. And if you have any troubles, message me because I've got the child's name and I can give it to you to go to the GoFundMe page and look up his name. It is a genuine cause. I've checked into it, and they're actually one of my best friend's cousins and their son. So
Oh,
I've
bless.
looked into it, so it's really genuine. It's not big time now because, you know, it's very sad to see because he can't see through. Basically, he's got slits for eyes, and the doctors have opened those eyelids up, and his eyes aren't forming properly because he's not getting the right, you know, he can't see through the slits. So his eyes are now not forming properly. So,
Well,
and if
fingers
Blue Moon
crossed.
can hear me, if you want, when you're ready to join, click the join guest button so that Sir can bring you in. And any gifts to me on here will be going to them directly as well, to this young child. So
So
any
please,
gifts to me will go to them.
if you like what either me or Blue Moon are saying, just gift History and Coins if you are going to gift at all. Um, you know, obviously, that's far more worthy than me and Blue Moon, without sounding rude to Blue Moon. I don't know how you gift. How do I've never gifted because I have no. I normally just do these lives, so I don't actually watch other people's lives, so I don't know how to gift. So if you could explain to people how to gift.
Well, they either press the rose that's down the bottom or there's a box. If they've got any coins, they just, you know, they click on me first and then they click on either the rose or the box down the bottom and send the gift through. You've got to have coins in your TikTok. It doesn't matter if you don't, because what I do is what everybody else has gifted, I double it and I send through extra because we don't get a lot out of it. I can be on a live for 2 hours, we only get a few dollars, but I always double it because those few dollars still make a difference at the end of the day. So, and there's a couple of hundred of us out there now that are doing lives about this, and we all do the same thing. We double what we make and put it into the GoFundMe page. So if I make $2 on this live, I make it pay the $4 in there. It's not much, but it all helps.
And that's brilliant.
So
Fingers crossed. Thank you, whoever that was that just gave the cap. Um, so,
thank
Blue
you,
Moon, we're
Daz.
waiting for you to sort of request coming in. I'm not asking you to come simply because you're probably busy or something. So we'll wait. So in the background, I put there. Oh, thank you, Caroline.
Thank you,
Um,
Carol Ann.
that's lovely. So in the background, I put.
Yes, skip the grace, it does it up.
Sorry.
Sorry. I was just saying thank you to skip the grace because they said it does that up,
Yeah, it
and it
does. Yeah,
does.
yeah. That's lovely. No, that's great. Um, so in the background, I put live chat with the greatest paranormal researchers. So today you are going to be in for a treat. So we've got History and Coins here now. History and Coins. If you could just give a bit of a brief explanation of why you're called History and Coins and what we can expect from the live tonight.
Well, I'm actually going to be delving into a bit about the paranormal in respect to Annabelle the doll, and also about, you know, the history of some coins. I do all history, but you know, I do history of coins. I do ancient history like you do OTH. I usually, you know, try to keep most of that to you though, because you know you do it. You've been doing that for a long time, but I still research it in the background. And if I find something that I think you might need to know about, I send it on to you. As you know, I send you quite a few videos and ask your opinion on them. And I'll be also talking about a diamond which was called Hope's Diamond that was actually cursed as well. Was found and cursed, and I'll be talking a little bit about paranormal. If there's questions about that, because I am also a paranormal investigator and a medium. So it's a lot of things people don't know about me, but that's what I'll be mainly talking about is the cursed coins and Annabelle the doll. If someone wants to know more about her and where she come into it, but Hope's Diamond is a big thing because it was actually a really big thing that's now in Washington DC. So
Brilliant. And uh, we've got Blue Moon just joined now. And Blue Moon
Hello.
needs no
hello.
introduction. So if Blue Moon could just explain what you'll be chatting about tonight for the audience, because people might be watching this on or listening to this on Spotify or YouTube or on my website or wherever. So it just gives them an idea at the beginning where we're going with this.
Sure.
Over to you.
So, in this episode of Archer History, we're going to be exploring famous haunted objects that have been capturing the imagination of people all around the world. There are dolls that seem to come to life on their own, to cursed coins, which seem to have an imbued negative effect on anybody that finds them. And all of these objects are steeped in paranormal mystery. So this is going to be a really fun topic. What's interesting, too, is that quantum physics really does support the fact that objects, sites, can be imbued with negative conscious energy that creates these curses or these effects. So I'm going to try to back up everything you folks are saying with some science, and also be bringing up a few things that you might find interesting, like the Dybbuk box. And again, she mentioned Annabelle the doll. I've actually had the occasion to speak with the Warren Foundation for Paranormal Research and work with them. And I can tell you that the original Annabelle doll has not left its box at the Warren Museum. There is another doll that they take around to events and things and let people take pictures with. And this is a question that I get a lot. Is that the real doll? So for anybody worried out there who's going to these paranormal conventions and things and taking pictures with Annabelle the doll, she is not the actual doll, so you don't need to worry about it. But the doll is said to have caused a series of disturbing events, including photographs and video of it moving on its own, leaving cryptic messages, and even physically attacking people. So this should be a great episode. Thank you so much for everybody that's joining us. And if you would like to leave gifts or donations, please know that they are going to a very young child. I believe he's less than 10 years old. Who, no, I think he's actually less than a year old, isn't he? And he is going to go blind if he doesn't have emergency surgery. And so we're trying to help the folks in Australia who are his parents gather up the funds for that operation to save his sight. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here and participating.
Brilliant. So if I may be the host, only because I'm not familiar with the subject as much as you guys are, and that way I can direct the questions to both History and Blue instead of both of you sort of talking over each other, for example. So if that's okay, and I'll read out the questions as well. So,
great.
Ali, brilliant. Ali Marie has wrote, "Hi from Oregon."
Hello.
So, my first question is to History and Coins. I've seen objects on old news reports where there is an item that is in a cabinet that seems to move on its own. Are you familiar with that type of thing? And is that what we're talking about? Do they move, or is it just something that affects a person mentally?
No, you can. There is objects that move. There's one that I know that you're talking about. I've seen myself that moves. Also, you can get young children who, when they pass over, they may go onto their own toy, their favourite toy, right? And that favourite toy might be passed on to somebody else, and they might see it move and things like that. So it's not uncommon for them to move. I know of an investigator myself who did an investigation at a house because a toy was moving on its own, and they could not work out why. They bought it at a garage sale, and it turned out that it was possessed by a young child, a spirit, and it was moving on its own. It's moving its arms and its legs, and it was actually moving around in the room. They'd shut the door, and then they'd find it in a different spot. When they came back in the room, it'd be in a chair, and then it might be in the corner, and things like that. They can do all sorts of wonderful things when they're possessed by something.
So
and not always bad possessions either. That's right. Not always bad possessions either. They're sometimes good possessions, like when a young child possesses a toy. It's not have any bad intention. It's it's just because it was its favourite toy, and it tries to play with the other child by moving and things like that.
Okay. So I guess my question would be: is if I've got coins in my pocket, how likely is it, or does it have to be an ancient coin?
Usually, ancient coins are the ones that for, usually got a curse on them. I've found that the main ones were there was one back in Turkey not long after they first started making coins that had a curse on it, and every time it got passed on to somebody else, they ended up having bad luck and misfortune. So it's usually only the really old ones that there is problems with. Most of the new ones, there's no note down on any research that I could find of having any sort of curses on them. It's all usually back in the 17th and 18th centuries up to the 20th century, where you come up to Hope's diamond, and that was used for currency back in those days because someone wanted to pay someone for something, and it was dug up in India, and then it was handed to somebody else for a payment, and it turned out to be cursed, got stolen, and ended up causing everybody misfortune after that. So
Yeah, it's a blue moon. Are you aware of any of these type of curses? Because I know you look at Project Emperor and the
yes.
Hatman and things like that. So, and I know
hmm
you've spoken about curses before, but for the audience, what is your take on a curse or whatever it would be that would pertain to an object that may have a spirit or something connected to it?
Sure. So, cursed objects, cursed items go all the way back to the very first human civilization, which is your specialty, which is Sumeria. And there is a famous story called The Curse of Agade. And the Curse of Agade was found, Agade is Agade. This curse was found on a cuneiform inscription dating back to the Akkadian Empire, which is around 23 AD. And it's attributed to the Akkadian king Naram Sin, and it's described as the fall of the city of Agade. So this was a prophetic curse, and it reflected the ancient belief in the power of curses, just like the Egyptians and every other human civilization has since before time was time. And this is an area that people are either going to believe or disbelieve. But if you think about it in terms of the modern age, so we know from quantum theory studies and from physics that energy is eternal. And energy only continues on, even in our own human body after we die. Consciousness, it's the power of consciousness. And if you are somebody who has a really powerful mindset about something, whether it's negative or even positive, you can, by consequence, imbue an item with that energy. This is typical for every civilization on Earth. And it's not so much about the item itself, because the item itself is inanimate, right? It doesn't have an ego, it doesn't have a personality, it doesn't have feelings. But the person handling the object does. And so this is something that has been recognized by humans since the very beginning. And the Sumerian and Akkadian belief systems in divine curses and consequences are unilaterally spread across all civilizations. It's really a testament to the culture and religious aspects of ancient Mesopotamia and the world and human civilization and consciousness. So, for instance, people nowadays will go to their church or their pastor and they'll get their religious objects blessed. And in the same hand, some ancient pirate 1,000 years ago who got his hands on some good grub put a little hole in the ground and buried it with the curse that if anybody touches it, they're going to have consequences. So I would say throughout history, there are numerous examples, Egypt being the most obvious, where people have effed around and found out. So whether or not you believe in curses, the curse might believe in itself. And I think that's how it works, but that's just my opinion.
So, Blue, can I ask you then, would that work for luck? Because people have lucky charms.
Yes.
So is that something to do with that?
Yeah, it's the same idea. It's just the power of human belief systems and human consciousness leaving literally an energetic mark on something. We've seen this here a lot in the United States with native indigenous artifacts, especially ancient grave places where they've buried people and their sacred objects. Those people, that was their world, that was their reality, and they believed in it so strongly that they created it. We know that this is true now. We call it manifesting. We call it creating, from the ether, our thoughts. But this is a real science. We live in a physical reality made of different.
Okay. So history, I was just going to ask, has there been any tests done on, for example, coins that are believed to have, supernatural connection to it, using modern equipment such as electromagnetic or, any kind of device? Are you aware of anything like that to see whether or not they actually have any physical properties that actually are slightly different?
Yeah, actually, so there is an organization called the Tavistock Institute here in the United States. A lot of people are not aware of it, but if you Google it, you'll find all about it. And the Tavistock Institute specializes in the scientific exploration of paranormal and psychic phenomenon. They actually took the Annabelle doll from the Warren Museum with the permission of Mr. and Mrs. Warren, and they tested it in its lab. Lorraine Warren had an extensive relationship with them because she had gone there and done a lot of testing with them to prove that she was a psychic medium, with an 85% success rate, I might add. Lorraine Warren knew her shit, okay? She was the real deal. They took the Annabelle doll and they locked it in a box under observational conditions at the lab. It had an energy reading. Now listen, folks, it's an inanimate object. It doesn't have a pulse. It doesn't have an aura. It doesn't have blood in it. There should be no energy coming off this thing. But when they did Carolean photography, which is a form of photography that actually takes a picture of the electromagnetic spectrum or the aura around a person or an object, there was a clear delineation of red energy around this thing. And so it really is considered a truly imbued object with some psychic power.
Just from my, me, I like to look at everything from a different angle.
Yeah.
Did they manage? I would have tried to get a hold of the same doll that didn't have, and then do the same for that, just so then I can rule out that it's not.
Oh, they did that.
Oh, did they? Right.
They did that. Yeah, they did a comparison analysis because they wanted to see, was it the fabric that was picking up a charge? Was it the material the doll was made out of? Did that have some kind of metal or something in it, that could have been creating that? So they did a very thorough job. And jinn, yes, Lewis, you are correct. It could be a jinn. There's a great belief, especially in the Middle East, that they are a race of beings that exist on a different dimensional frequency that can affect changes or objects here in our world.
Jinn X is right. I wonder if our spirit guide or soul helps giving us luck if we wish it enough.
Yeah, good or bad, whatever you put your mind and concentration into, it will absolutely create luck or create a curse. It's true both ways. Have you found accounts of that to be true as well, History and Coins?
Yes, I have. So
yeah.
I don't know what Sir's come across, but I have.
Yeah, no, get this. I was just going to ask. Go ahead.
Yeah, I found that a lot, actually. So, and what Blue Moon just said, she actually took the words right out of my mouth in respect to what they've done. A lot of places have done these, use an EMF reader and stuff on coins and artifacts like the doll, and done it all under, proper scientific conditions. But they still say it's all belief that there's no physical evidence of it, because they don't want us to know the full truth about it. So.
Right. Yeah, and that really kind of ties into what's going on now, because if people are empowered with information that the things that they used to think were fantasy or were ghost stories are actually real, that changes the social paradigm and empowers people to believe, oh, I can create luck, I can create abundance, etc.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And
People are easier
that's
to
what.
control if they're scared. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the Hope's Diamond. They know for a fact that everybody that touched
Mm-hmm.
that Hope's Diamond had bad luck and
Oh yeah.
misfortune, but they still say it's all belief. So, I mean, when every single person that had it in their possession either went broke or something bad happened to them before they put it in the
Mm-hmm.
museum,
Mm-hmm.
every single person, that can't be just belief. When it went through a king's hand, from when it was dug up in India at 112 carats in weight, right? And it's well documented that it was got our French general got it first. Well, he went broke after having it. Then it was that was in the late 17th century. He sold it to King Louis the 14th, and it became known as French blue then. And in 1972, during the French Revolution, it was stolen with the crown, some of the crown jewels went missing, and it resurfaced later on. And throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, it was changed, it was cut and polished and changed down to 45.5 carats and got known as Hope's Diamond then. And everybody that touched it went broke. And in 1958, Harry Winston, a renowned jeweler then, donated that to Washington, D.C., to the I can never say that word, Institute in Washington, D.C., and they
Smithsonian.
put it on,
Yeah.
that's it. They put it on display at the museum there, and they reckon it's the the curse is actually held within it because of its boron content, which gives it its blue, deep blue color. And but every single person that owned it and touched it before it went into that museum went either broke or something bad happened to their health. So that doesn't say there's definitely a curse, then something is wrong. But they all still say
Yes.
it's belief.
I'm
Don't know.
going to
It's
Yeah.
thank.
folklore.
And can I make a quick point
Yep.
that the Hope Diamond is a crystal object? And we know right now from science that different kinds of rocks, different kinds of crystals and minerals can hold, process, and emit power differently. So the Hope Diamond is a great example, and I'm glad that you brought that up because diamonds are particularly powerful conductors of energy. So it's easy to see how if a person were to focus enough energy, personal energy and attention on it, how it could be imbued and hold that energy. And to answer a question here really quickly that was brought up by a little gal who said, is there a crystal inside of Annabelle doll? They did an x-ray as well as a material analyzation of both the real Annabelle doll and the fake Annabelle doll to make sure that there wasn't any devices or metal or objects inside of them. So they did submit them to x-rays. They did submit them to Carolean photography and to other testing to make sure that the readings were accurate. So I just want to answer that question. Thank you.
So thanks to the people that's been giving gifts while you guys have been chatting. Hopefully the gifts are being directed towards History and Coin, who is the person for the fundraiser for the young boy that
Yes.
requires an operation.
Yeah,
Winnie
most of
had
them are,
wrote.
yes.
Sorry.
Sorry, most of them are getting sent through me because my numbers are up to 731 at the moment. So thank you all.
Yeah, so if you can, anything that you offer, please give it to History and Coin. Winnie had wrote, I wonder if these artifacts are crystal. So my question would be to History and Coins, is there a predominant coin made of a particular silver, copper, bronze, whatever, that has more of these phenomenon attached to it, or is it just literally across the board, doesn't matter what shape, size, colour, or material?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't really matter because predominantly they started off with like an extract of gold, similar to gold, and silver. The first coins were were actually made in Turkey out of, I can't think of the word now, I've got it written here. They're made of electrum, which is a natural alloy of gold and silver, and then they were stamped. So it really doesn't matter. Even back when the first coins were made, it was still, the stuff in them were able to have curses attached to them. But it happened more often when they were back in the ancient times than what it does nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still
Mm-hmm.
some floating around nowadays that would have curses on them because someone would have a special one, or like an old penny, for argument's sake, and they may, have cursed that penny or something like that just because they didn't want it getting passed on to somebody else or going into the wrong hands and things like that. So, it doesn't really matter what sort of material it's made of. It seems to be a common thing. If someone really wants to make sure there's a curse on it and they know how to do it, they can do it.
Okay, Jace Fuller has wrote, is there do the opposite of the hope diamond? And I guess the double part of that question
Yes.
would be, is there anything that can uncurse, for example, the Annabelle doll?
Yes. There's a great example in your own home country, actually. It's called the fairy flag. Has anybody ever heard of it?
Okay.
So, the fairy flag of Great Britain is often referred to simply as the fairy flag. It's a legendary and mysterious artifact associated with the Clan MacLeod of the Isle of Skye in Scotland. And it's not an official flag of Great Britain, but it does hold a lot of significant historical and mythological importance. Nobody has been able to determine the exact origins of the fairy flag. It's almost 1,000 years old. And it is fascinating and it is beautiful. It's a small silk flag, maybe about 53 centimeters, and it's yellow gold in color, and it's said to be made of pure silk. The flag itself is adorned with intricate, faded, and barely discernible Celtic knots, red, black, and green designs. To be believed, some of them look like they're more Mediterranean or Middle Eastern in origin, but they are made in combination with Celtic symbols, so it's very interesting. And there are several myths and legends associated with the fairy flag. Thank you for the likes and the taps and the shares of this podcast as well. Thank you for Archery History. One of the most famous tales claims that the flag was actually a gift from the fair folk to a MacLeod chieftain who had saved one of their lives. And the flag was said to possess magical properties, and it was believed to bring good luck and fortune and protection in times of need. The MacLeods were instructed to only use the flag on 3 occasions, and each time that they did, it was said to have saved their lives. The flag was said to have been gifted by a fairy lover to the MacLeod clan chief, and who knows if that's true or not, but that is the thought. Now, the current location of the fairy flag is actually in Dunvegan Castle, the ancestral home of the Clan MacLeod on the Isle of Skye in Scotland, and it is very carefully stored and displayed in a case for folks to see. Now, what's really interesting is that the flag, that Great Britain, the country itself, the Queen herself, put so much faith and energy into the belief system of this flag that the British government actually almost requested that the fairy flag be flown right before the evacuation of Dunkirk Beach, when the Germans had the British forces crammed up against Dunkirk Beach and they were going to wipe them out. And the British people themselves rescued their own soldiers by every little fishing craft and boat and dinghy they could find and went over there and started evacuating. At the very last minute, they decided not to fly the fairy flag because they had a good thought that they were going to win the war. But the fact that the British government themselves was like, hey, we might need to borrow your flag. What does that tell you?
Me a lot, but I knew about it. So,
sorry, I was just going to get into the questions again. William 007 hello, and June X wrote, since childhood, I've had doubts about my Catholic religion. I've been sensitive to the paranormal. Winnie then wrote, if it landed in a person who was optimistic, would that break the curse?
I think that's probably equal and reactive to how much energy was imbued in the object itself. And if there's more than one person focusing on it to try to break the curse. For instance, the Hope Diamond that History and Coins was talking about earlier, so many millions of people coveted that object because of the prestige and the beauty and the value of it. You've literally got millions of human beings imbuing energy into a single focused object. The same could very well work if millions of human beings were focusing positively on an object. We know from group consciousness studies now that if you have, more than 10 people in a room focusing on, let's say, making it rain outside, the more people that you have concentrating on that, the more it's going to manifest.
Jun X has asked a question, so I'll ask History and Coins the question first, and then
Sure. Go for
then
it.
Blue Moon after. Jun X has wrote, because I know you, Blue Moon, has studied this probably a lot more than history, but he wrote, I used to see shadows, feel an entity around me and my family as well as my kids being sensitive to it. So my sort of question leading on from here would be, has there been any creatures such as shadow people been seen near or with the object that you're referring to?
There has been, and I understand what Junix is saying there because I have the same thing where I still do see shadows and feel an entity around me, and I've had this going on for many years. And being a paranormal investigator on the sly, I have been investigating things like that, and I have known of cursed objects having shadow figures turning up around them. For example, one investigation I know of, they did on a child's actual toy. The family there kept seeing a shadow figure, and the paranormal investigators did too. When the toy moved, there was a little shadow figure of a child in the corner. So they can actually have shadow figures around them a lot of the time, as well as have the one that's inside the actual item, if you know what I'm saying.
And Blue Moon, your take on that?
Yes. Yeah, so absolutely. Okay, hold on. I got distracted. Could you ask the question again? Because now I'm lost. I was looking at a comment.
That's all right.
Sorry.
So basically, Junex said, well, I'll read the whole point out now because I've read some more. So he used
Sure.
to see shadow people, feel an entity around me and his family as well as his kids being sensitive to it. However, the moment I became aware that the Bible was and Jesus was not my creator, I no longer sense or see those entities. So I was saying, was any entity seen with these coins or objects that may have been
Oh.
cursed? History basically said yes, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your take on it? And why do you think the Bible had any relevance, if anything at all, or was that just a coincidence for June X?
Sure. So in response to June X, you have to remember that there have been a million different religions on this planet since it started. Those ancient Sumerians had a whole pantheon of gods that they believed in. We have a whole pantheon of gods that people believe in now. And I think that any religious belief system is only relevant to how you feel about it. It's you imbuing your personal belief system and energy into your faith. And that either rings true or false for you, depending on your own moral compass. And as far as beings or shadow people or the Hat Man being seen with cursed objects, absolutely. One of the most famous examples of that is the Dybbuk box. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Dybbuk box, it is an object that was created by a Jewish woman who at the time was living through the Holocaust during World War II. And she was so heartbroken and devastated about all her friends and family around her that were being slaughtered that she attempted to use an ancient form of Jewish magic to what she felt was trap the spirit of this rage and death and murder into this little box. She passed away. 50, 70 years later, somebody ends up with this box in a junk store and they buy it. And it was actually here in Portland, Oregon that this happened. And the shop owner started seeing shadows, started hearing his name called, started seeing objects flying off of shelves of their no accord. Then he went home and he started seeing shadow people, and the Hat Man started showing itself to him and his family. Now, the Hat Man is not specifically connected to the Dybbuk box, but it's very interesting that all of this started after he opened the Dybbuk box. After he opened it and started messing with it, then all of this activity started, as if he had released it into his environment.
When he wrote, "What if you don't know it's cursed?" Does that actually make an effect on it?
You would think so, right? If you have no previous knowledge of it, why would it affect you? Again, I think it comes down to, it doesn't matter if you believe in it, who or even aware of it. It was the person who imbued the energy. They left like an energetic fingerprint on the object. And energy doesn't die, it doesn't go away. We know that with science. So if that energy is still stuck there and it's still yucky, it would make sense why it could still affect people even 100 years, even 1,000 years later. We've got all those examples from Egypt and other archaeological sites around the world where people start messing with stuff and then they start having issues.
So if these are genuine phenomenon that may be cursed, etc., where does breaking mirrors come into it? Where does walking under a ladder come into it? Or do they not, from your point of view?
If you mean, how do people break those curses on objects?
Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
So that, I think, again, sort of depends on people's belief systems. Because if people believe, for example, if somebody believes that they're a white witch and that they have powers and that they can remove a curse off of a person or an object, it really boils down to their belief system versus the belief system of the person who cursed the object. And numbers matter in this game. Just like if you're doing a consciousness experiment to make it rain, the more people you have, the more likely this is going to work. And this was proven on many talk shows, including Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, who did consciousness experiments with summoning rain to drought-stricken areas. And lots of other places have done the same thing. So I think if you get, 10 witches together and they're like, listen, we're going to whip out the woodgie and we're going to get rid of the curse, I think you have a pretty good shot at it because, again, it's the power of belief. It's the power of the belief system. It interacts with with everything.
So if that's the case, then if you break a mirror and believe in the 7 years bad luck, what you're saying then is your own manifestation of that belief will actually cause you 7 years of bad luck.
Correct, I think so.
Yep. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing I'd like to say in respect to mirrors, it's a known thing in the paranormal field to not ever have two mirrors facing each other because it makes a portal. And a lot of portals are made that way for spirits to come through a lot easier, even though they can go wherever they like anyway. It's a known thing that it'll make a portal. And I've actually proven that point on a paranormal investigation I did, where two mirrors are actually at a 90-degree angle to each other, but because they're different parts, actually joins in one spot, I went there with I've got a pendulum, and I stood right where that 90-degree cross is, and the pendulum started swinging, and I could feel it pulling my hand down, which told me there's an actual portal there. So you've got to be careful where you place your mirrors, because they can put portals in for your house for spirits to come through. Not always bad spirits, bad energies, but it could get good energies through it too. But it's been known to allow portals for bad energies to come through. And that's like looking into a mirror, or you close your eyes and have candles around you, and when you open your eyes, you're supposed to be able to see into the portal and see the spirits that are in there. I've not tried that one yet, but I'm going to one day.
Jun X has wrote that his mum said she was cursed, and he's been ignoring it and what she told him. But after hearing you guys, meaning you guys now, it may be true. In other words, the things that you're saying resonates with what she was saying. And he's wrote, I was told to get rid of old items in the house, which I have not done anything. So, so should he get rid of these items, or will they now still stay attached to him because he believes in it?
I think that will depend more on June X and the energy she imbues into it. You know, the cursed or negative energy that was associated perhaps with her grandfather or his enemies that were going after him because of his success. You know, they were lusting after his success. They were lusting after what he was able to acquire, which were those objects. Now that's, you know, they didn't sit around and stare at an item in his house and go, wah, you know, that's pretty unlikely. It's more likely that they were focusing negative energy on him, the human being. So I would say, you know, the items are probably just fine. It was your grandfather that was the focus of so much negative energy.
Interesting.
But hey, if you notice one of them, you know, doing something.
The ones that move, these are what fascinate me. The ones that move on their own. Because I've seen,
Yeah.
items, as I say, on shelves and stuff that supposedly move on their own, and they've tried other objects there. Could it just not be the footfall that was walking in the shop that had the item that, I'm just throwing ideas out there. Could they just be mistaken on some of these?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that they are. Human error is always possible, and we'd like to attribute a lot of things to what we don't understand. If we don't see it happen for ourselves, if we don't understand the mechanics, for instance, quite frankly, all of us being here on TikTok on a live 100 years ago would have been considered witchcraft, and we would have all been burned at the stake looking in our magic mirrors, right? So it's all about interpretation, I think.
Can I give some advice to do next year? If you're really concerned about it, then set a camera up on some of these items, and if you see any of them move or anything like that, you get footage of that sort of stuff, then you know that item is actually got some sort of curse or something on there. That way you've got proof of it. I wouldn't go getting rid of anything until you know for sure, because it could be a spiritual attachment to you or to your mother.
Yes.
That's come from your grandfather or things like that too. So you've got to think outside the box, and you can set up an EMF reader if you can get them quite cheap on something, and then put a camera on it to film it the whole time, but mainly overnight, because that sort of thing normally happens overnight in what we call spirit hour, which is 3 to 4 a.m. Then you film that, and you'll see if the EMF reader's gone off for some reason at a weird hour, you know there's something in there. Or if you see something move, then you know something's going on. But you better getting it on film first, so you know for sure that there's something wrong before you go throwing things out that could be, passed down through generations. It could be worth a lot of money, and that way you can know that it's either that or you've got an attachment on yourself or your mother or whatever.
Could I also bring up a quick point too, that not every, just because you're seeing an object in your house move doesn't mean it's cursed. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's evil. It could actually be that there is some other entity that is fascinated with it and is interacting with it. The human race has believed in the unseen forever. So in like Germanic culture, they very much have a belief in house fairies, the Nisa, which are those little red-capped gnomes that are so popular. They were considered a house fairy, a house spirit that would help you with your chores or with the general health and safety environment of your home. And, they would run around and mess with objects. People would leave milk and food out for them as a way of honoring them and their service to the household and the family. And if you're going to believe in cursed objects, it's not much more of a stretch, and it's actually based in science, that, life exists in different formats on different levels of frequency and reality. So just because you see something move, it may not necessarily be a negative situation. It may just be that the beings who live in your house that you don't necessarily see might be fascinated with it. You just don't know. But don't be afraid. That's a waste of time.
I was going to ask, is there any benefit to talking to the object? Like for example, if you thought it was, not just cursed, but if it had an entity. You know how exorcisms, etc., go and they say, leave the body, blah blah blah. Is there anyone done that and changed the outcome of the object?
I'll let history answer first.
Yeah, well, I find that, well, I know of investigators that have done that, and if you go tackle it with peace, love, and respect, and a lot of times, and you talk to them, you can actually get the curse off the object, especially if it's not a bad curse, if you know what I'm saying. It's not a dark energy. It's very hard to get rid of a dark energy off a cursed object. You need more people to do that. So when it comes to a light energy being in there, if it's scaring the people and they talk to it, then they ask it to leave politely. A lot of the times it will leave. So it's just, you don't show them fear, first of all, and you tell them in peace, love, and respect that you'd like them to leave, then a lot of the times they will leave.
And
So
to back her up, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, honey. Go ahead.
that's what else I was going to say. What's your take on that, Blue?
Oh, thank you. So there's a couple of examples I can give you folks. One of them is Robert the Doll. So Robert the Doll is another infamous curse doll, and it's currently housed in the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. And it's believed to be possessed by the spirit of a child. It's also attributed to having caused misfortune, bad luck, suicide, and other horrible events to people who have disrespected it or tried to take photographs of it without asking it permission. Now, visitors have reported that the doll actually changes expressions and even moves on its own. This has been recorded by several people on film. And people have sent letters of apology to Robert, along with photos of themselves and their kids, in an attempt to reverse any curses that they believe the doll may have placed upon them. Now, for people who do ask permission and who are polite and speak out loud to Robert and say, "Hello, Robert, I'm yada yada. I'd like to take your photograph. Would that be all right?" That same group of people has had no issues. No issues with Robert the doll. So, it's kind of fascinating. Another one is the Okiku doll. The Okiku doll is on display at the Manenji Temple in Hokkaido, Japan. Sorry, honey. I know, I almost went way south with that, babe. Sorry. So, the Okiku doll is on display at the temple in Hokkaido, Japan, and it's believed to be possessed by the spirit of a little girl. And the story goes that a young boy named Ikicha bought the doll for his sister Uiki, and she passed away soon after receiving it. Uikicha believed that the doll contained the spirit of his sister, and its hair started to grow. Over the years, the doll's hair has continued to grow, and visitors claim to hear the sound of a young girl's laughter whenever they go near it. The doll is considered a national treasure. It's been examined by experts who have been unable to explain the hair growing phenomenon.
Interesting.
Can
So
I
going
mention
along,
something
going along.
first?
Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
Can I mention something here? A friend of mine actually got sent, he's a paranormal investigator, along with his friend, they're co-creators of a group here in Australia. They were called Night Watchers Paranormal of Australia. If you want to go and check out what happened with Todd the doll, they were sent a cursed doll in the mail, in a suitcase.
Oh.
So they opened it up and they left it sitting there all night in the suitcase, sitting upright with a camera on it. And you could see the doll moving, even its eyes. Now, how the eyes move, we have no idea, because the eyes were actually sewn in there, but you could see them move. Its arms moved. Then they did a live on it, And they didn't see it themselves, but the people watching the live could see its arm moving behind one of the investigators' shoulders. It was bringing its hand up towards his shoulder, and he felt something touch him on the shoulder, but he didn't know if it was the doll or something else at the time. But when they went back and watched the footage, it turned out the doll touched them, and they heard a disembodied voice actually come through on the microphone, but they didn't hear it themselves. They heard it on the microphone of the camera that was filming. So if you want to check out a haunted doll called Todd, then go and check out Night Watch with Paranormal Australia. They did a whole thing on Todd. They've still got him. He's locked in the suitcase because it literally, scared the living kajibas out of him. They're going to do another investigation on him sometime this year, but this coming year. But the last one they did scared the living kajibas out of, paranormal investigators have been doing it 15 years. So it scared them that much that this doll actually touched one of them and was moving around behind them. And even at night when the camera was on it, it was moving around and its eyes were moving and the eyes were sewn into its head. So they could not work that out. But anyway, that's what I wanted
Wow.
to bring that up.
That's
I was
amazing.
going to ask, so the people that may have had an object that may have a spirit or phenomenon attached to it, is there any difference between religious people having these objects and non-religious people?
No, that's why it's so weird. The phenomenon is universal. It doesn't matter if you worship purple potatoes or if you worship Jesus Christ. It doesn't seem to matter. Religious or non-religious, people still seem to have the same experiences and phenomenon across the board.
Just because I was, because of the way people talk to me about religion, if they perceive it, therefore it changes their viewpoint on things. So,
Right.
because you were talking earlier about the object, depending on your own perception, if you're happy, you're not in a disposition. But obviously, religious people will look at it from a religious point of view, I would have thought, as opposed to fear and stuff, and make it as a
Yeah, again, that's the power of the belief in their own God. I really think that if they are a true believer, whatever that true belief is if it's Allah, Yahweh, Jesus Christ, or purple potatoes, it's the power of their own belief system at work.
And where do I get these purple potatoes from?
I know, the holy purple potatoes.
So is there anything because I know there was a few different subjects, so this is obviously fascinating, but I think you might have mentioned on your chat beforehand that there might have been a few different subjects that you guys might want to cover.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask a question of the audience. Have any of you ever experienced a haunted object? And what do you believe? Do you think that it is possible for dolls to be imbued with the spirits of the insane or the lost, or what? I'd like to get a reading of the room and just kind of see where people are at.
Okay, so hopefully people will start replying with their thoughts. Obviously, you don't have to have had it, but what's your thought?
No.
I asked a question earlier. Sorry, I didn't actually get it out. And Willie wrote, how to question mark.
Right. I
Any
will
ideas?
give my opinion, and then History and Coins should give hers. It's down to you. What do you believe is going to work? You can go to your priest and have prayers done, or you can go to your local white witch and ask her to do a spell. I think it really does come down to a personal belief system. What do you think, History and Coins?
Exactly what I was going to say. It comes down to your belief system, and it also, there's a lot of ways you can go about it, but mainly your belief system is the one thing that's, the big thing. You can sage yourself, you can go and see your priest, there's a lot of different ways you can try to do it. And it's not actually classed as a curse. It's usually classed as an attachment on you. A curse on a person, on a human, is very hard. It's usually an attachment done to with you that causes most of these problems to go around. That's what I found out in my investigations, that most of the time it's an attachment, not a curse. That you can get curses on people, but I usually find it's usually an attachment with the person, not a curse.
Right, right. That makes sense, doesn't it?
It seems to me that there doesn't seem to be much physical damage to us normal mortals, but it seems more psychological or bad luck when a cursed item is in their possession. Is that right? Or is it more physical danger?
I think it just manifests differently for different people. There have been lots of examples throughout history of objects having both beneficial and harmful effects. And the thing of it is, if there wasn't anything to that, if it was all bullshit, then why was every ancient civilization and culture, why did they all believe that certain objects and items had power? Everything from the fairy flag to Annabelle the doll. The ancient Sumerians had lots of examples of that. And I wanted to ask you a question, Archery History, about that. So, in all of your research about ancient aliens and Sumeria and the Anunnaki, have you found or heard of any accounts in the histories of them creating or imbuing cursed objects of any kind?
Not
Or is that
objects,
attributed
but
to humans?
yeah, to people. I mean, if you believe that the Anunnaki were the same people that the Greek gods, then you probably know how many stories of Greek gods of curses, Medusa, for example, and so on. So I've Ivan Finkel, the head curator, wrote a book on curses from the Sumerians. So the first ever civilization has a book written by Ivan Finkel with their curses, and I think some of those probably are attached to objects, but I've not read his book, so that might be something you might be interested in.
I will definitely check that out. So, Abba says, what is the evidence of cursed objects? History and coins. Would you like to answer that question to begin with?
Well, the only
What
evidence,
evidence have you found?
only evidence I've found of cursed objects is what I've seen with my own 2 eyes with respect to, especially Todd, and what I've done in my investigation on Annabelle and stuff like that. But that's the only things that I've actually seen personally about the cursed objects. The evidence that the tests and that they've all done on these objects that have shown that they are cursed. So that's the only thing that
Right.
I've seen in that respect.
So, I can tell you personally, just because I've worked with the Warren Foundation and I am currently working with a legitimate exorcist from the Vatican. He consults on my work, Dr. Kenneth Torres. The Vatican has a whole scientific arm. These are what we call the Black Priests, or the what's their order? The Jesuit order. They are the scientists, okay? And they've actually taken Annabelle the doll, for example. When the Tavistock Institute started doing its scientific examinations by doing electromagnetic readings and filming and Kirlian photography and the things that they were using, x-rays as well, to examine the Annabelle doll and the other generic version of it to compare, the Jesuits at the Vatican also did their own series of tests using both scientific and religious objects. And so, it's not true that every object that is labeled cursed is cursed. But people should know that there is legitimate hardcore science that has examined a lot of these objects. And the objects have stood up to it.
Does it have to be a personal object that the person had? I know you were saying earlier that it's more than likely they're coins, for example, but can 2 seconds before someone dies, could they attach themselves to anything else that wasn't theirs?
I believe so. Again, this depends on your own emotional, compass where you're at and your belief system. But a great example is the fairy flag of Great Britain. Now, nobody's handled that flag except the MacLeod family, the people who examined it from the British Museum. So almost nobody's actually physically touched it. But what a lot of people have done is thought about it, looked at it, envisioned it, and sent a lot of energy to it. And and it's worked. Twice in history, when the fairy flag was brought out, it literally saved Great Britain. And all it is just a little yellow flag. So you can take from that what you want.
I guess the flip side of what my question was when you go to a clairvoyant or a medium, sometimes they ask for items of the person. So just because
And I,
they're not cursed, they've still got the retaining phenomenon that you would be talking about on ones that are cursed. So it kind of works both ways, really, by the sounds of it.
can
It
I
does,
say
and it's
something
really
on that?
Go ahead.
Sorry. My father, after he passed away, his watch was left to me. Now, I find that I've had this battery changed every year, okay, and it stops at the exact same time on the same date as he died. Every year. So I believe he, in some way, is attached to that watch. I've still got it, but I don't wear it anymore. And it sits in the drawer because it stopped every year at the exact time and the exact date that he died. So I believe that watch
That's
wasn't anywhere
interesting.
near him when he died.
Right?
Do you take that as a loving thing, or because I'm just thinking if you didn't connect the dots and say that was his birthday and someone else had it, they might have thought it was her.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Right?
it could be taken that way,
Perception.
but yeah, I take it as just him reminding me that, which I would never forget
He loved
because I
you.
was there, but
Yeah.
that he loved me and that's his way of saying that. But I got sick of paying out, changing, batteries every year on it, and it's stopping
Yep.
on the exact same time on the same day. So it sits in the drawer now here with me. It's always right next to me all the time. But it was just his way of saying I love you, and I'm still around. But it's just funny how it stopped on that exact time on the same day, and I wore it for the first 3 years after he died, and then I realised, oh, this is doing it every year at the same time on the same day. So that's why I now don't wear it. I just have it in my little drawer next to me.
You know,
So what?
another great example of an ambient energy affecting an object would be like the Civil War battlefields here in the US. Now, thousands of men and women, mostly men, died on those battlefields in the worst way. And, that war's been over for a really long time. And yet, people can still go there today and they'll report seeing the ghosts of soldiers on the battlefield. They'll report the sounds of cannon fire and gunshots. It's as if the trauma, the emotional and mental trauma of the event was so powerful it imbued itself into the physical topography of the environment, and it's replaying on a loop like a recording. And we know from different scientific studies that different kinds of rocks, minerals, and crystals, as I said, can store energy and emit energy. So why couldn't they store and emit memory? Especially because memory is really human electromagnetic consciousness. So it's like a recording. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
History?
that to me is I can't think of the word for it, where it plays back. It's like a movie. It plays back residual energy in the area.
Yeah.
It's
Recording.
it's like a recording of it. So it's a residual energy, and that actually I've been told happens on the Kokoda Trail as well. That people that have walked the Kokoda Trail have heard and seen things as well. So it doesn't just happen, there for the Civil War. It happens on the Kokoda Trail too. That a lot of veterans I know that have walked that have heard things and seen things as well. So, and can I excuse myself? I'll be back in a couple of minutes. I've just got to take the dogs out. So,
sure, go for it. Yeah, and that kind of residual energy phenomenon has been recorded in ancient Neolithic sites, ancient temples like Stonehenge. People have reported hearing chanting, and they've reported hearing drums. So, that residual energy, whether it's good or bad, it can really be recorded in the environment itself, not just in objects.
Well, there's kind of evidence of that with the Virginia University studies into past life regression, because the
Mm-hmm.
children, most of the children that remember their past life, e.g., what you were just talking about, having a memory,
Mm-hmm.
they've got the memory because of a traumatic experience. So it seems that the traumatic experience from a person somehow leaves an imprint somehow on either the location or on an object.
Absolutely. We actually know that human DNA, okay, your human DNA contains memory. It contains up to 25 generations before you of epigenetic memory. So every good and bad thing that your ancestors, that your family ever experienced was recorded in the genetic memory codes of DNA. And scientists and researchers are now looking at that as one possible explanation for past life memories. Maybe it wasn't your past life, maybe it was your grandpa's. You just don't know that. But it's certainly an interesting line of thinking, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah. So the question is, whatever this memory is that seems to stick around, does it dissipate?
Right. Well, we know
How long
from a
does
lot
it
of
stay
studies
for?
that the children who report having past life dreams or information, that usually seems to fade out for them by about 5 years old. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's just kids being imaginative and whatnot. And yeah, that's possible. But why would children come up with such detailed information about things they know absolutely nothing about, like World War II? There was a great case here in the States about a little boy who was 4 years old. Welcome back. And he was telling his parents how he died in World War II as a pilot. He even told them the name of where he was in Germany. Now, this family was Mexican. Okay, they had just immigrated like 50 years before that into the United States, so they didn't have any family members that were involved in World War II. They weren't a military family. They had no knowledge about any of this. This is a 4-year-old child. So there's a lot of, and that's just one case. There's a lot of cases out there of people remembering. And it could be that the electromagnetic imprint, again, of experience and information is simply more accessible to little children because all of their societal filters are not firmly installed. You know, we're taught from a certain age, that's real, this is not real, fall in line. And so I think between the epigenetic DNA memory combined with perhaps their own spiritual memory, their own access to their spiritual body, which holds all that information, maybe that's where it comes from.
Just going back to the loop effect that you was talking about, people seeing things on the battlefield, and of course, there's so many stories of
Mm-hmm.
people seeing ghosts walking through a wall, dressed in period costume, or clothes, should I say,
Mm-hmm.
and repeating it over and over again. The question then would be, what if they died in a dramatic experience or a dramatic way? Why don't we see dinosaurs or animals that also die in that way? Why don't we see their ghosts or battles on a battlefield where they're all attacking each other? Why is it just humans? So it must be something that we have that they don't,
Yeah,
or it's just us having the ability to see us. Maybe I don't know.
my my opinion, and I'll give it and I'll let history and coins take over, is it's the difference between self-awareness and consciousness. Animals don't walk up to mirrors and say, hi, I'm an animal, this is who I am, and I have thoughts and blah blah blah. They have thoughts, they have emotions, they do respond to things, but they don't have self-awareness of themselves as a race. Otherwise, I think they would have already risen up and gotten rid of all of us, right? So I think it's a matter of self awareness and intelligence. It's a matter of conscious development. That's why we don't see ghosts of dinosaurs and ghosts of this and that, because they were animals. They didn't have that level of consciousness and self awareness. Exactly, Winnie, like being reincarnated. So, exactly. So, I think that that's why we don't see that, but we do see human ghosts or human events being repeated in a ghostly form because humans are conscious and self aware. What do you think, History and Coins?
Only took the words right out of my mouth. You just literally
I'm
said what I was
sorry.
going to say. No, that's fine. And in respect to the residual, like the residual energies like that, it's usually a traumatic event that causes those residual energies too. They have found in paranormal investigating and, scientifically that it's usually a traumatic event like that that would cause a residual energy. So that's what I found in my study. So, and I totally agree with what Blue Moon Sydney said before, that that's exactly what I was about to say.
Well, and in the Gnostic, or the belief systems of a lot of cultures, they will make a specific distinction between the animal spirit and the human soul. So a spirit and a soul are not the same things. And perhaps, again, that's related to self-awareness and consciousness. I don't know. But that would make sense why people don't see a lot of animal ghosts, quote, as compared to human ghosts. Although I will say that in the last 100 years, there have been more and more reports from people in modern society about ghosts, cats, and dogs, pets specifically. And I think that's because, animals are smart and they spend a lot of time with us. I have even had an encounter with my own dog who came to see me after she died. My sweet Great Dane named Maddie Mae Barn Romper. And, I don't know if she has a soul or not, but I know she has a spirit and she came to say hello.
I've had the same thing. Where my dog coming years ago, after my first German Shepherd passed away, I had her come and lay on the bed. So to explain to you, Winnie, some people do see their own dogs and cats and stuff, but I have actually had mine lie on the end of the bed. I could see her, and then after I couldn't see her, I could see the indent where she was still laying on the bed. So you could see it on the doona.
A lot of people report that.
Back to you, sir. Sorry.
Orbsville wrote Orbs were a start to my spiritual awakening and have been here, and in brackets, my home for 4 to 9 years, or 4 years, and never bothered me. So positive, never negative. Just going from that to the question of that Winnie just wrote about hexes, asking how to do them. If you've got a person that can see orbs, no problems, and then you've got someone that wants to know how to create hexes on people.
Right. I have no information about that personally, just because I'm not a Wiccan or a practitioner of any kind, but I sure wouldn't want to put a hex on anybody, because you F around, you find out, and whatever you do to other people is going to come back at you threefold. That much I do know. So y'all be careful throwing those hexes around.
You don't understand. Sorry, sir. Never play with anything you don't understand. And if you want to get rid of a hex, it just depends on your belief system. So.
Yeah.
In the Lost Book of Enki, if you believe it's translation, when Enlil did something naughty with a young girl, Ninhasa or Nimna put a curse on him, and then when the young girl said she'll marry him, she lifted the curse.
I wonder how they did that. Do you think that was with technology or personal belief?
That's a good question. Is ancient curses really just technology, or are they actual curses that we would? It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, did she give Enlil the clap or something because she was mad he was out doing stuff? I mean, you got to ask yourself, these were intelligent people who had technology and culture, and obviously she wasn't happy with his behavior.
She was chief medical officer as well, so is it possible that when they banished
the clap for sure.
She did actually sleep with him, even though she's his half sister. But and they actually had a kid, which called that. But did she inject him with something? And it's called a curse, and we don't. Nowadays we call a curse something different. Like demons was different back then.
Right. Yeah, she could have gotten him sick. Who knows what she did to him? How did she, put the curse on him and then remove it? That's a good place
Yeah,
to start.
yeah. I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to that one.
Right?
I don't think it's a clap.
Jane has a great question. Jane says, do you have any experience of objects appearing from mid-air through an appropriation? History and coins?
I've actually once seen an object appear out of nowhere, and that was on the paranormal investigation, actually. That we have no idea. It was like it came through a portal. It was actually came through what we looked like a wall. It was a wall there, but from what we could work out, it came through what used to be a window that had been changed to a wall. Because people think spirits can walk through walls. No, they walk
Right.
through what actually was there in their time. And if there was a doorway there, then they can walk through there. But if there was no doorway there, they can't. If there's a doorway, no doorway there now, they would be able to walk through there. But if there was a doorway back in their time, then they can go through it. Now, we believe there must have been a window there, and the item, which happened to be a teddy bear, came through the wall from one room to the other. And we believe there must have been a window back in the day. And when we did look into the old plans of the house that we were in, that had been changed, but it didn't show the window at that point, but it could have been one there earlier on because it had been modified several times before we got there to do the investigation. So that's
Yeah, I've
my
heard.
take on that.
No, you're spot on. I've heard that so many times where people had seen sort of what they called a repeating ghost or a repeating spirit, where they would go and open a door, but there's no door there, and the eyewitnesses are like, why are they
Um,
there? But there might have been, as you say, in a previous time when they were alive.
Uh-oh,
That's
we got
correct.
something glitchy going on.
Yeah,
We got
every
something
now and
glitchy
then,
going on.
every now and then it glitches up. But that's what I found. It has, from what my investigating and what I've been taught from other investigators, that they have found that if there was a door there, and there might not be one now, there could be just a whole wall gone, you'll see the spirit go up and open the door, but there's no door there. So, it really, I've seen things appear out of nowhere, as I said, and in investigations, and I've had, spirits do the same thing, go to open a door that's not there. So, it's the same sort of thing. So to answer you, Jane, I've seen it. It does happen.
Yes, and what I was saying is that is confirmed by Dr. Kenneth Torres, who is a Vatican exorcist. He has seen objects appear out of nothing during exorcisms and during paranormal investigations that he was consulting on. There's even, there's lots of, there's a famous account actually. In one of the churches in South America about 20 years ago, there was a huge stir because one of the solid marble statues was leaking blood from its eyes. And the Vatican responded to this. They did x-rays of the survey of the statue. They checked for anything in the ceilings. I mean, they were exhaustive. And they couldn't find any reason why this blood was appearing on the statue. And this kind of phenomenon is often reported in hauntings. The Amityville Horror house in the United States that was a big subject of a documentary and examination by the Warrens and Lorraine Warren, they saw liquid coming out of the walls that had no discernible source. They saw a lot of flies suddenly manifest and appear in a room. So we know for a fact that there is a history of this happening.
Jane has wrote, do you understand the meaning behind the object?
One of the things, and I want to know how History and Coins feels about this too, but one of the things that's been told to me repeatedly by Father Torres and by other paranormal investigators is that the paranormal responds and interacts with people based on their cultural perception. Again, it goes back to human consciousness and your belief systems. So if you're interacting with a being or an entity whether it's in a negative or a positive context. And they are trying to communicate without words. And they're apporting, they're making objects or things appear, as we were just discussing. It's whatever your cultural perception and understanding of those objects being interpreted is. So flies, for instance, in all of the Judaic-based religions, the presence of flies signifies the presence of the demonic, of true evil. And so in the Amityville Horror House, when the Warrens were walking through and doing their examination, this was one, and this was, a few years after the DeFeo murders. They couldn't find a source for the evidence of that, but it was significant that the Warrens, being devout Catholics, they understood what those flies meant. And incidentally, the priest, the original father, who went into the Amityville Horror House to investigate it, he was killed in a car wreck as he was leaving the Amityville house. And the Vatican very much believed it was due to demonic influence. So there are consequences, and the paranormal can manifest itself to people based on their own cultural understanding. What do you think, History and Coins?
Yeah, I totally agree there. And in respect to what you were saying earlier about the blood coming out of that statue, I know of another statue that had that was made of a veteran actually, and it had blood coming out where he was actually shot. And they spent ages trying to work out how this happened, and it turned. They believed that it was his spirit had gone into his own actual statue that they made of him, and it seemed to happen at roughly the time of the year that he was shot and killed. And he was shot and killed trying to get his men out of where they were, and he stood up and got shot so that his guys could get out. And he was supposed to get a purple cross, or Victorian cross, or I can't remember which it was, but he was supposed to get a cross for it, for getting his men out, but he never got it. So they made a statue for him, and they found that that statue every so often would bleed in the spot he was shot. So they ended up taking the statue down from being outside because they were scaring people, and put it up inside the building in a glass case so that it wasn't so scary to people. And they always shut the building down on the time that it was happening so that it wouldn't happen in front of people, if you know what I'm saying, because it was too scary for a lot of people. And in respect to these objects, the meaning behind the objects, as I said before, what you said, Blue Moon, was basically what I was going to say, but, it depends on your belief system and things like that.
Right.
So, we all believe on that.
Winnie had kind of a follow-up question to that, where she said, are these understandings about these objects mostly religious related? I would say no, Winnie, because it's your cultural perception of whatever that particular object is, and if it's a fly or if it's a coin. Like, the gypsies used to believe that if they would wear a copper coin in their left shoe, it was good luck. That's not religious, it's just a belief system they had. So I would say it doesn't just restrict itself to the religious. Would you agree, True History?
Yeah, I agree. Do you too?
Well, what I was going to say, because that leads me on to the next thing. So, if they believe it, what happens if an exorcism was performed on the item? Does that actually work then? Because if it's just a belief, then it would be only the person that owns that object that's having the bad problem. So would an exorcism be able to remove whatever it is, and therefore the person believes that it's now removed, and therefore is now happy, or does it continue? Have you heard?
I think that really, again, depends on the power of the belief system of the individual, because as people, we are just a form of energy. When we die, we're just a story. We're an imprint of energy that continues on. Well, if your belief system is more powerful than the individual who imbued their belief system on the object, it's a matter of heavyweights. Who's going to win? Did that person believe in their power to curse an item more powerful than you believe your God has the ability to remove it? I think it sometimes comes down to the numbers.
When he wrote, are these understandings mostly religious related?
I did answer that, but again, I'll just reiterate and say that I don't think it's restricted just to the religious. I think
Mm.
it's to any object,
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and
It's
it
not all
yeah.
religious.
Sorry. Someone, a few has said hi, and then Lewis has wrote, Dr. Stephen Greer had an episode with a spirit after surgery.
I gotta look that up, Louis. Thank you so much for bringing that up because Stephen Greer, for those of you who don't know him, is he is a clinical doctor. He is a surgery room doctor, and he's also one of the primary movers and shakers in the UFO alien disclosure movement. So, if he said that he had experience with a spirit after surgery, I would definitely go look that up and look into it and see what he said.
Phoenix is right. I
But
noticed that even without praying, just telling the entities to leave, that they leave.
Yeah, I think that that's very possible. You know, if they're a being, they have intelligence. They may not necessarily be a negative entity. They may just be somebody or something that's hanging out because of whatever reason, and maybe they don't understand that they're not wanted. Maybe in their version of reality, they're just doing their own thing, or maybe they're trying to communicate in some way, but we don't want that. And so I've heard that very often that, you know, there are certain rules here, and one of them is permission. There's a reason that the vampires always got to ask permission to come into your house, right? Well, I think that's the same true with spirits, and I think that sometimes it's not about getting all nasty and doing an exorcism. I think sometimes you can just be polite and say, please get the hell out of my house. What do you think, History and Coins?
yes, I was about to say in respect to that. A lot of the times, these spirits sometimes don't even know they're dead, and
Right?
you've got to ask. A lot of the times, as a paranormal investigator, we ask that question, and they don't know. We ask them. They feel trapped a lot of the times in a place that they're not supposed to be, or because they don't want to live there, or whatever. And we ask them if they want to leave, and if you want them to leave, a lot of the times you just ask them, can you please leave, and they will. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does, especially if we've had male entities that used to own the house and they still believe it's their house. And, they believe that you're in their house, not them in your house. And sometimes you just got to set boundaries and say, well, hang on, you're in my house now. It used to be your house and you need to move on. And then you got the earthbound ones that, like we call the earthbound ones, like the what do they call them? Oh, I can't think of. Like we got the Aboriginals here in America. You've got the American Indians, and that we class them as the earthbound ones. And sometimes they, it can be quite nasty towards you because you're on their land, and they think you're trying to damage something on their land. So, and they go after occasionally the wrong person. I know of a case where they put water pipes through down near a creek. Okay, and whenever the father came to mow the lawn, he would see a American Indian down there, and he would always feel overwhelmed with fear. So he stopped going to the house to mow his daughter's lawn. And after they got in a American Indian to talk to this entity that was down there and to say that these people weren't the ones that put the pipeline in to ruin their water, their stream, they understood and they left the family alone after that. So,
Right?
there's a lot of different situations you've got to understand that they can be earthbound ones, which we class, like the Aboriginals here and the American Indians and stuff like that, which is a completely different spiritual thing than what our one is. And you get the belief system back into it again as well. So
Right.
it depends on a lot of things.
And that's a question I wanted to ask you really quick, History and Coins, is do you think that spirits are aware of the passage of time from their perspective, because I speak to a lot of folks, and a lot of the paranormal investigators I've talked to have said, it's a gamut. There are some spirits who are actively intelligent, who seem to be aware of time. There are others who seem to have no idea that anybody else is there. They still think it's their place. What do you think causes the difference between spirits who are self-aware that there is a passage of time and the ones who aren't?
I'm not sure what actually causes that. I reckon it's possibly an intelligent thing, as you said. But yeah, I've known of some that have no idea of, time has passed and things like that, and some that do. Through my own investigations and investigations that of other people I know, but more times than not, they have no idea of passing of time. That time doesn't really exist to them, but you do get the odd one that does. So, to answer that
and
question,
I think that and I think that kind of goes back to how they died and what their mental state was when they died. Was it traumatic? Was it peaceful? Were they sick? Were they unconscious or conscious? Because I often wonder if that does play a role in a conscious, sentient haunting versus a recorded haunting.
I agree with you there. I believe it does too. So, but that's only a belief of mine. I'm not 100% sure if that's true, but it's a belief of mine.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Jane has asked, how are spirits entities able to switch on electrical items that are unplugged?
Oh, well, they're pure energy. They're in their energy form. And this is science, not science fiction. We know for a fact that, human beings are 80% water and a variety of minerals. And this creates a toroidal energy flow in your system. Your heart actually has 500 times the amount of electrical energy that your brain does. And your heart actually has 200 times the amount of magnetic force that your brain does. So if you're feeling something and then you start mentally envisioning that in your mind, you are actively co-creating with reality itself. Everything on the planet has an aura or a biofield. It's literally your electromagnetic biofeedback system that you and every plant, animal, and other human being on the planet has. So at the essence of human existence, you are an energy form. And as energy, you can flow. That's why we can record ghosts and paranormal activity with certain devices like EMF detectors. My husband is an electrician. He uses that at work. Do you know how many jokes I've heard about this? But he knows that it works, and he goes, well, it makes sense. If they are electrical energy or a form of electromagnetic energy, we're going to pick them up on our equipment. And so I think that's how they make objects work that are not plugged in, because they're actually charging it with their energy itself. It's the same idea as if you're in a room and there's a lot of paranormal stuff going on, and maybe you're part of an investigation team. All of a sudden all the batteries in your equipment is dead because the being or the entities are using that electrical energy in order to be able to manifest whatever activity or communication is going on. Have you ever had something like that happen to you, History and Coins, where all of your equipment went dead because it got zapped?
Yes, I've had it happen multiple times, including my really good camera, which I just fully charged and arrived to the scene, set it up, and less than 2 minutes later was dead flat. So I've had it happen plenty of times that I've actually seen an unplugged TV turn on, and the show that actually came on was not something that was now shown on TV. It was shown from the 1960s, or 1970s, I think it was. So it was something really weird that hadn't been on TV for years. So I've actually seen things turn on and actually show an old show from many years ago. How they did that's got me buggered how they showed the old show, but I know that they use their energy, and they can take energy out of us, they can take energy out of all of our items, just to help build their energy enough to turn something on. So
Right. And I was going to point out for just a second, and thank you for bringing this up, folks. This is a form of censorship and shadow banning that occurs on this app. If you'll notice, up at the right hand corner, it's only showing that there's 32 people actively in the room listening right now. Whereas on my secondary device, that isn't my phone, it's my computer, it shows 54 people. So that's very interesting. I often think that this program, my program, and others are restricted in our circulation for whatever reasons. I don't know what those are. But that's why the likes and the shares are so important. And thank you for doing that, because that counteracts some of the algorithm that is restricting, flow to everybody else that this live is even happening. So thank you very much. Be the resistance.
Oh, that's terrible, that is, isn't it? The fact that you've got two different amounts. That's disgusting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have
It's
noticed
typical.
though,
A lot of
something
creators are.
I've noticed with TikTok lately, if your channel gets over a certain amount of followers, they will start restricting you. And it's happened to a lot of people I know. I'm waiting for mine to start happening because I'm getting up there slowly now. And we found that over 1,000 followers, they start restricting the amount of people that can go in and watch your live. So it shows me there's 29 people in here at the moment. And, I know there's probably more watching than what it says on my screen, but it tells me 29. Now, just a reminder to everybody, if you want to send through gifts, can you please send them through me so that it can go to the fundraiser for the young boy? So far, it was going really well there for a while, and it's basically stopped because we hadn't reminded people when we've had extras come in.
Yeah.
So just a
Why don't you
reminder.
explain to them what's going on with the child too, and how old he is and his circumstances, so people understand why the donations are important.
He's almost 6 months old, and he has to be flown to Europe to have this special operation and medical treatment for his eyes, because his eyelids are that swollen that he cannot see through. He's only got little slits, and his eyes are not forming properly behind these little slits because of their swelling in his eyes. So he has to have the surgery and special treatment to stop the swelling coming back on his eyelids, so he does not lose his sight for the rest of his life. So all the donations, all the presents that go through here to me will go through to them. If you want to, you can go straight to the GoFundMe that's up on our True Histories thing there. And if it doesn't go through to that number properly, contact me privately and I'll give you his name so you can search him up on the GoFundMe, because we find the link occasionally plays up. So if you have any problems, please get in touch with me and I will, pass on his name so you can look it up on the GoFundMe page. But if everybody, if you can't do presents on here, goes and puts 50 cents on the GoFundMe page, it all adds up. It's just one thing that'll help this child get over there and get what he needs done. And I thank everybody for that.
That's such a great cause. So if anyone can, even if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, for example, later on, just look at the background image. It's got the details on there. Spotify now allows videos to put up, not just audio.
Thank you, Kit Kat.
Wow, that was a huge gift, Kit Kat. Thank you so much. Or Jane, I'm not sure which one of you put that up there, but thank you so much. That was a huge gift. Again, this is for a 6-month-old baby who needs immediate surgery or he is going to lose his sight permanently. And I believe it was due to medical negligence, wasn't it, History and Coins? The doctors didn't examine him appropriately when the mother first brought him in and said there was a problem?
When he was born, his eyes were his eyelids were swollen because they had a really rough birth, and they believed that it was all because of that. And then the mother kept saying, no, there's something wrong because his eyes are still swollen. And a month or so ago, she took him back because all he could see through was little slits, and the doctors realised that there's something massively wrong. So they did all the tests and they realised the only place he could get it done was in Europe. So they've been running around ever since trying to raise the money, because the longer he stays like this, the more chance he's going to lose.
Healthcare should be a universal right, not a privilege.
Done.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. but there was nobody here in Australia that has the technology and that to do this special operation and to save his eyes, because he's got to have certain medication injected into his eyes to help them grow quickly, and he's got to have his eyelids, certain stuff taken out of his eyelids, certain amount of skin to take the swelling out, and certain
Right.
injections and all that. And the younger he is, the better it's going to be for him. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you can't send a few coins to support this 6-month-old baby's operation, at least send some prayers, okay? Because the
yes,
power
please.
of prayer is a real thing. It's what we've been talking about throughout the show about human consciousness, how human consciousness can imbue itself either for negative or positive into objects. It can also do that to reality. That's part of what quantum physics studies, is how all of these molecules between the energy of human consciousness interact with the world around us. So lots of prayers for this little boy who needs a surgery, and we really appreciate all the donations that everybody has given to the cause. Thank you so much.
Great. I was going to ask, sorry, keep bringing it back, but I was
Yeah.
going to ask both of you guys, knowing what you know about everything that you've just spoke about tonight, is there any establishment that you think knows the answers?
About whether or not human consciousness can imbue itself on inanimate objects?
Yeah,
Is that what you're asking about?
yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple. There is the Tavistock Institute here in the US and in Europe. Tavistock Institute examines, from a scientific basis, things that are classified as paranormal or supernatural. I know that Cambridge University also has a department that is focused on that, because the more and more we learn about quantum physics, and CERN is a wonderful example of how that works. We discovered the Higgs boson particle in 1985. This is the building block to reality. And everything they're doing there is about learning how our reality works, what it's created from, how it interacts with us, or how we interact with it, depending on your point of view. So CERN is one of them, Tavistock Institute, Cambridge University. There's a number of institutions and organizations that take this subject very seriously.
So then the next question is, do you think there's any secret government organisations that are ahead of the people that you've just said? In other words, that really know
yeah.
what's going on and even how to manipulate it themselves?
Yeah, I'm sure. The one, there's the usual 3-letter agencies, that exist in every country. But there's also something called Department Zero. Department Zero is allegedly the sort of the dumping ground for all of the information that those other programs find. They kind of break it all down there as sort of a central storage point. Now, a lot of people can say, that's a bunch of crap, blah, 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is that all of our super soldier programs, all of our space programs, all of our weapon programs, all of our psychic warfare programs, all of that stuff is based on the experimentation of things that were going on during World War II. So this is not new information. It's just information that's now being made publicly available. A lot of the 3-letter agencies, including the CIA and the FBI here in the United States, and the Ministry of Defense in the UK, have dropped huge amounts of files about this kind of information. So the information is out there, but you have to go look for it. But it's there.
So a question for both of you guys is, I personally believe that in the fairly near future, we will have technology to be able to communicate with the spirits. Obviously not necessarily the phenomenon that attaches itself to objects, but the actual spirits themselves. What's your take on that?
I'll let History and Coins answer first.
Well, there is already some instruments out there that we've found to be quite accurate, like a spirit box if you put it in reverse, you will not get the radio frequency. You will actually get the spirits, because radio frequency, you'll still get them, but it won't do a whole sentence over multiple frequencies when you've got the spirit box in reverse. But there is work going on at the moment, and I know this because I spoke to a gentleman the other day who is actually working here in Australia, actually, on making other objects to be able to speak to spirits. And a group of friends that I know that are paranormal investigators are going to be testing these objects out and checking out to see whether they work. So there is works going on to get, new objects to speak to spirits. That's my take
Yeah,
on it.
I know. Yeah, I know from the scientific point of it that one of the things that we're really finding now through the investigation of electromagnetic frequency waves. Einstein said that reality is separated by layers of frequency and vibration. That's really true. There are, the multidimensional theory where there are multiple points of existence that are occurring simultaneously, but we don't see them or interact with them because they're operating at different electrical magnetic frequencies. There's a lot of scientists who have backed that up. So I do think that we're coming to a point in human civilization where we're going to be able to utilize our technology in order to determine what is a spirit and what is not. It may not be that it's a ghost you're talking to. It could be somebody who exists in a different level of reality from yourself. You might be the ghost to them for all you know. And that is one of the things that I think is really going to be interesting to find out. And that's something that I focus on in Project Umbra, is the Hat Man entity. People all around the world, millions of people have seen this thing. Regardless of their religion or their culture or their age or their sex. They're seeing the same damn thing, but it looks different to people based on where they're at. I was actually talking to History and Coins yesterday about this, and she blew my mind because she told me something I hadn't heard before, that the Hat Man version that shows up in Australia has a particular hat that is native only to native Australians. And this is interesting because there are about 8 different versions of this thing that people see. So JT had made a comment that I wanted to address because it ties into this. And JT had said, as if the Higgs boson particle affects your lived experience. Now, riddle me this, Batman, does it? Because there is something called the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is where millions of people across the planet remember certain events in history differently. I am one of those, okay? I was a senior in high school when I remember very clearly that they announced that Nelson Mandela was dead, that he had died in prison, and that was it. And then 3 years later, this guy like Jack in the Box pops up and he's suddenly the president of South Africa and has been released. Listen, I watched the funeral with my entire high school class on the TV. Oprah was there. There was a whole bunch of stupid celebrities there. There were protests in the streets. There was all kinds of drama. And then, what? That just didn't happen? So it would be one thing if it was just me that remembered it. But hundreds of millions of other people also remember it being differently. So if the Higgs boson particle is real, if the events at CERN are real, and they really are screwing with the building blocks of reality, it could necessarily perhaps affect our reality. Maybe we're in a different timeline. Maybe we're in a parallel universe. Or perhaps the experimentations there, because they're doing all kinds of stuff with electromagnetics, is bringing different realities together. Who knows? What do you guys think?
My take is that our consciousness, whether it's a spirit or not, has jumped the track. And a certain age people remember obviously certain things because we've jumped the track somehow. And again, possibly because of CERN maybe or something similar to that.
Dude, are you calling us old? Don't even go there.
He is.
Shame on you.
But you know, my daughter, for example, has no Mandela effect. You know, my 30-year-old doesn't have any of that issues. But I think certain people of certain ages seem to do. So I don't
Right.
know. What do you think? History and coins?
I agree. I reckon you're spot on there, sir.
Ah! You're siding with him? He called us old and you're totally siding with him? Traitor. Oh my god.
I feel
Ah!
old at the moment. I feel old at the moment. So I'm probably the youngest out of all of us, but I still feel old.
Oh, bless
You are
you.
eternally young, my dear. Eternally young. Yes, absolutely.
So
What
I
is
was going
everybody
to
else
ask.
in the room? Has anybody here had a Mandela effect? Anybody in the room?
Oh, I've had many. With the
Have you?
aeroplane. Yeah, the aeroplane wing. I used to live underneath Heathrow, literally underneath Heathrow. Planes would fly over the house
Yeah.
every 3 minutes or so.
Mm.
And I used to obviously look at the planes, and the jet part of that, the engine was under the
Yeah.
wing. And then one day I was watching all the things that people say about Mandela effects, and they said that the engines are now in front of the plane, and I thought, aha, of course they're not. So I googled it, looked at the old planes, the very first plane I ever went on. Then I went and got my footage out from my mini DV tape when I went on holiday, played it back because I remember we were sitting by the window and I was filming out the window. And now there's a freaking engine in the way. It wasn't there before
What?
because I wouldn't have filmed the engine. So
Whoa.
that messed my head up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not
Because
just one thing. Like, it's a lot of things that are like that. Gen X brought up a great point. She remembers that in the movie Karate Kid, the
red.
main hero's headband was white, not red. And I concur, girlfriend. And I remember that same thing. I remember it being white. Yep.
I think the headband was white, but with the red sort of pattern. But now the modern version saying was it with a black, still white headband, but with a black pattern on it. I
And
had
like I said, if it was just a few of us.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I had a massive 6-foot poster of the Karate Kid in my bedroom forever. Not because I'm a film fan, not a bloody
Yeah.
Ralph
Yeah.
Macchio fan. But I could have swore it was red. And when someone said what color was it, and on these TikTok or YouTube videos about Mandela,
Yeah.
I said straight away red, and then they said no, it's black, and I was like no. And then I watched an interview with Ralph Macchio, who said it's always been black, and I'm thinking no, it wasn't. What's going on? So yeah,
Right?
have you had any of these
Right.
things?
Yeah.
History and coins.
When I was dealing with the dogs, I missed half of that.
Any Mandela effect
Oh, we're
for you?
talking. Yeah.
Yeah, but off the top of my head, I've had a couple happen, but I just can't think of them at the top of my head at the moment. I've got my dog in front of me vomiting, so I'm just trying to deal with that at the moment. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I like what Space Shifter said. Space Shifter said Mandela effect is a parallel universe or a convergence of them. And Kit Kat said, throughout my life, buildings appear where they weren't before. It's not the same thing, but it's weird.
Well,
And
it
I
may
would
be
have to
the same
agree,
thing.
right?
Yeah, no,
You never know.
I've heard many stories of that, but maybe it is the same thing.
Yep.
Maybe your consciousness has jumped from, or your even body, I don't know, from one place to another, and now those buildings, and maybe you're continuously jumping.
Yeah, I mean, I read an article by a scientist from MIT that was talking about this. And he said, what if every night when we go to sleep, we're actually, people are talking about out of body experiences. And he said, what if every night when we go to sleep, we are dreaming, and that dreaming is actually us traveling to a different universe based on wherever our compass was that particular day.
Yeah, no, I thought that myself. I thought where we dream, we might not actually be dreaming. We may be living a life there and then of that thing happening. Because apparently you
Right.
don't. Someone said once that you don't dream with your mobile phone. There's no one's dreamed
Right.
where they're holding a mobile phone. I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, Imagine
Right.
that we're actually dreaming in a parallel universe that don't have mobile phones.
Right, right. And, Rick made a great comment. He said, I feel that the daylight now is different. It looks like someone turned the dimmer on, or am I going crazy? So, Rick, let's talk about that, my friend. That is kind of what we're talking about, the Mandela effect. So, I've heard people say in France, oh, it's hotter than it's ever been, climate change, it's terrible. Then you have folks up here, let's say in the Pacific Northwest, are like, that's not true. It's raining like cats and dogs up here. We have more rain than we've ever had. But somebody living in the same city will then pop up and say, oh no, we've been in a drought for several years. So I kind of wonder, I mean, is reality so subjective that all we're really doing are a bunch of little bubbles that are bouncing off each other? I mean, maybe for Rick, where he's at, for him in his reality, maybe it really is dimmer. But we don't see that over here because our reality is different for us. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, anything's possible after what I've seen of the Mandela effect. Anything's possible.
Right? I think it's possible. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's possible because, I mean, over here in Australia at the moment, we're having moments where we're having floods, and then less than a week later, we're having stinking hot heat and big bushfires
Right.
going on in the exact same places that we've had floods. And that's been going on the last 3 years. So,
Yeah.
but anyway.
Oh, speaking of the fires in the Australian bush, and this is a side note, but did anybody catch the news story about there was a huge section of the Australian bush, unfortunately, that burned? But what it revealed was incredible. They found a megalithic structure. It was just a couple of layers of stone blocks, but they were the size of the same ones found at Pumapunku.
Wow.
Huge stones. And all over them were carved or painted or something hieroglyphs. It's like 40, what they say, it was like 40 feet long or something. Did you hear about that, History and Coins? It was a brief news blip about 8 months ago because they were going through and assessing the area of the bush that had burned, and they found it.
That actually happened in two places in Australia. One here in Victoria in Gippsland, where they were blocks that didn't have actually any carvings on it, but they were cut so straight and like the ones in
Massive.
that place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were massive and they were cut so perfectly, but they were in a spot in the bush that there was no way in the world you could have got them there.
Right.
Physically got them there.
Previous.
And there was another place in Australia, I can't remember exactly where it was, but the one that caught my attention was down here in Victoria in Gippsland, where they had the ones that had those perfect, straight lines and all that, and they were huge, and they were on a spot in the mountains that you could not have driven them in there or anything like that. So
Right.
it's really weird.
Right. And I was going to ask you a question because I think a lot of people would find it interesting. Is it true that there are still some parts of Australia that are out in the deep, deep bush that are governmentally protected and are restricted? Only the Aboriginal people can go into them and only on foot. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There is quite a few
Okay.
spots that's like that.
So what's
So-
interesting to me is that we have regions like that here in the U.S. There's like some stupid amount, like 50,000 square miles of the Grand Canyon, of all things, that people are not allowed into, period. You can't fly into them, you can't helicopter, you can't paraglide, F around and find out. The only people allegedly allowed in there are the Indigenous Native American people who tell me that if they get caught trying to go in there, they get turned around. That's a huge amount of land. You could hide a major city or a couple of them in there. You know what I mean? And I wonder what you guys think. Do these areas that they restrict and I agree with you, Scottish Blue Moon. I think there's a portal there, and even the Native Americans have stories of portals and a whole different civilization that exists in there. And I wanted to ask you, History and Coins and True History, if you think that that's a possibility. Maybe that's why they're cordoning those areas off, because they don't want us to know that there could be alternative civilizations living out there. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And there's also one spot in Australia that is cut off to only the military, and they say it's because they
Oh
use
yeah,
it for military training. But yeah, right. I know better than
yeah.
that. I've been in the
So do
military. I
I.
know. I know
Yep.
better than that. But they
Mm-hmm.
say it's just for military training. But in respect to the other ones that just the Aboriginals can go into, they
Yeah.
claim that they gave that back to them for native land. But there's something else fishy going on there because
Yes.
not all
Super fishy.
Aboriginals can go in there because only certain ones. So
Yeah.
real fishy.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, our true history? Do you think that those areas could be cordoned off because they're hiding remnants of ancient civilization, or because there is an existing alternative civilization going on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's places, even pyramids in Egypt that have armed guards that you're not allowed to go to. The
Yeah.
structures or the temples in India, temples that
Mm-hmm.
are solidly sound. You can walk in, but they board them off. They block the entrances. They
Right.
block the tunnels. There's tunnels that actually go from one
Mm-hmm.
temple to another, and they've blocked them off.
Yep.
So they're doing it for not because of whether. I mean, India's not like America, so they don't have the military to be able to. So instead, they just board them off. Whereas, obviously, in Australia and America, they have the military, and there's probably
Mm-hmm.
something. I mean, if you believe that Skinwalker Ranch has a portal, which, if you watch their program,
Yeah.
it looks like it's
Oh,
coming to
yeah.
that conclusion. It makes sense that the military will block off that. I mean, they've done it to
Right.
Antarctica, obviously, but people seem to think it's a flat Earth. But
Right.
there's things in Antarctica that they clearly don't want us to know about. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Skinwalker Ranch, since we brought that up, Freedom, thank you so much. There's a lot going on there. The Native Indians have all kinds of lore about it. And if you actually go on YouTube, you can find videos that people have taken of the amazing hieroglyphic art that you'll find all over Skinwalker Ranch. It's also on Wilson Ranch and other properties around the United States. And in other areas of the world, folks, Skinwalker Ranch is not just in the U.S. There are areas across the whole world that have things going on very similar to that phenomenon. And Skinwalker Ranch. So they had a group of Native American Indians come on, the Ute Indian tribe, who are native to that area. They were invited to come on the ranch and perform one of their drum ceremonies. And the Skinwalker Ranch folks had all of the scientific out there that you could ever want. Okay, thank you for the likes and the shares. Please send all the gifts to History and Coins. So the Native American Indians were doing their drum ceremony, and the Skinwalker Ranch team was monitoring them. I'm not crapping you. I can't make it up. There was a sudden burst of light and energy coming from the mesa itself in direct response to the drumming. And this was something that was covered in some CIA documents that were released on their website when they went through and started examining things, that Native American tonal and drum ceremonies, you know what that is? Music is a type of frequency. It is frequency interacting with technology or something else in the area and creating an effect. And I think that that is true for all ancient cultures, the Aboriginals, the folks in Africa, the folks in Asia. There are pyramids in China, folks, hundreds of them, and they are intact. Do not get it twisted. They are intact. But the Chinese have gone to great lengths to cover them in dirt and literally vegetation to try to hide them as mountains. But with LiDAR technology and satellites, they weren't able to hide them forever. So this stuff is everywhere. It's everywhere.
Well, I mean, going back to the point about the rocks, changing their heat. There's structures, man-made structures, or should we say ancient alien-made structures around the world.
Mm-hmm.
India and Greece and I think Rome and obviously Samaria that's now obviously buried.
Everywhere.
But they've got these structures that react or have some sort of sound thing in them. So, for example, in India, there's some steps to a temple that each one has a different sound to it. There's columns that
Yeah,
come
different
down,
frequency.
yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
you tap and it has a certain frequency. You know, to
Mm-hmm.
do that, to hollow a stone out to just to make it so that one person can tap it for. So I think there might be something to definitely frequencies and stone
Yeah.
structures, which goes back to that story. I know it's possibly a story, but the guy that went to one of these, I think it was Puma Punku, where there's sort of a fake Stargate or a fake door that supposedly is a Stargate, and the story goes that he kneeled up against it, got told by the locals to hum a
Yeah,
tune
Puma
and get
Punku. Mm-hmm.
teleported. Yeah, so
Yep. Yep.
you know, I think there is certainly something with the sound and these these blocks or stones.
Yeah, and this actually even applies to the paranormal. And thank you so much, Kit Kat. Archer History is an amazing show. Thank you, everybody who is here, and for liking, sharing, and tapping the screen, and for sending the donations to History and Coins. Very worthy fundraiser for a 6-month-old baby boy who desperately needs surgery in Europe in order to save his sight. This is a great show, and we appreciate the support. The thing with the paranormal and frequency is also relevant because what we've been able to determine with technology is that different paranormal activities, locations, situations can be recorded. That's electromagnetic energy that's not going anywhere. It's being recorded. And when it comes to things like the Hat Man, you know, we really think that that is a paradimensional entity that either through technology or through its own natural ability is able to somehow hook onto a negative vibration frequency, and that's how it selects its victims. And Skinwalker Ranch, you know, they've seen shadow people. They have seen shape-shifting creatures that come out of portals that activate and open in the air. So this is a consistent thing that's going on all over the place in different ways.
For those that don't know what we're talking about, Skinwalker Ranch, because again this might be played on Spotify, etc.
Oh, right.
So if you want to explain what the ranch is and what the TV program is, just so that people know, hunt for the TV program, because
Sure.
I'm sure you love it like I love it. I think it's one of the best programs.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love that show. The Skinwalker Ranch show is on Amazon and a bunch of other cable programs, but it's basically Skinwalker Ranch is an area in the Utah Basin in Utah, the state of Utah here in the United States. The Ute Indian tribe has been there forever, and this particular area that Skinwalker Ranch exists on is a place that they call the Skinwalker Valley. Skinwalkers are evil. They are thought to be people who have sacrificed family members and resorted to black witchcraft, and have now become shape-shifting beings who can murder people. Now, on the show, you know, they pay homage to the Native American mythology and lore surrounding the area, because, you know, that was their experience as a culture. But what the Skinwalker Ranch crew does is they focus on the scientific aspect of the investigation. And what a lot of people don't know is that Skinwalker Ranch was owned by Bigelow. Bigelow is one of the biggest, most wealthy people on the planet. And he did a investigation of Skinwalker Ranch along with a lot of government backing and support from the military to investigate on all levels what was happening there. At some point, his wife, Mr. Bigelow's wife, died on the ranch. And violently, by the way, and on camera. There was people there when it happened, and he attributed it to, as did they all, to the other phenomenon that was happening. So sometime after she passed away, he sold the ranch, and it was dormant for quite a while. Another gentleman came and bought it, and now they are basically sort of rolling out UFO alien uh, disclosure on the show with some of the evidence, because they're bringing in all kinds of people from the government, from a lot of other organizations to do their tests, and they're doing it publicly in a way that they are trying to gently educate people and sort of get them used to the new reality that is going to very suddenly be in everybody's face, whether they like it or not, about the truth of our reality, of who we are, where we came from, what we are, what we have the potential to do, and the fact that there is life out here in the universe besides ourselves, and that we may not be the apex predator that we think we are. So, Skinwalker Ranch is fascinating.
I think we just have to add that although they're doing this on TV, etc., they are also being
Yeah, Freedom, I
monitored
did.
by a secret organisation, Black Ops or the secret military complex or something like that. So although they're asking governments for help, there is another shadow government or whatever it is that's spying on them, and we know that because we actually see the evidence in their program.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, again, it's just like everything else that's going on. It's just a movie. They know the reality. But how do you prepare an entire race who thinks it's xenophobic and that they're the only ones who exist? How do you prepare them for the reality that you're not? And that half of what you've been told isn't even real? You've got to do that somehow. How do you communicate that? Well, they started this with social programming back in the 50s with Star Trek, the original Star Trek. I really believe that they are slowly indoctrinating human civilization so that when the others do decide to reveal themselves completely and fully in public, we don't melt down and just watch it all burn. You know what I mean? I think that there is a brighter future possible for humanity, but you have to gently help a civilization come to terms with that reality, right? And so I think Skinwalker Ranch is one of the vehicles that they're using to inform people. What do you guys think?
Well, I think sorry, go ahead.
So, I agree with you there, Blue Moon. And can I say something else quickly? I'm going to have to finish up in about 45 minutes because I've got to take my son to the hospital to put in for surgery for tomorrow. But the other thing is, I've lost my train of thought. I've got to excuse myself for a couple of seconds because my dog is really sick here at the moment. I want to take him outside. So can you guys just
Go
keep
ahead,
going
honey.
for now, and I'll go and take him out.
Okay, well, best of luck for your son and your dog.
Still here for another 45 minutes, but I'll have to leave in 45 minutes so that I can take my son, get him ready and take him in.
Oh,
Well, no worries. We
fingers crossed
appreciate you
everything
being
goes
here.
well.
Take the dog out and I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, so sorry, just going back to your point about getting us ready. The story goes that the movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, was actually funded, the original one, not the Keanu Reeves one, was funded by the military in order for them to ascertain what the public reaction is to having a UFO land with a humanoid coming out and more technically advanced. If that's true, then they've possibly been doing it since that film, which I think was the 50s.
Yeah, and I think that that's true. I think it's been going on forever. There's another great example of that. This is an older movie, and tap the like button if you remember it. It was called, Lord, there it went out my brain. It was a Steven Spielberg movie. It was huge, and it was before he did E.T. He actually wrote it in an entire weekend after he had met with a former CIA operative who was telling him about this interaction that had happened on top of the Devil's Tower over in the East Coast. Help me with it, Archery History.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yes! Thank you, bless you. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He wrote that movie in 3 days, based on the information that was given to him by this operative. And so, Hollywood has always... Hollywood was originally created by the SOS, which was before the FBI was created here in the United States, as a PR vehicle arm to the American public so that they could, do their propaganda, both good and bad, to try to help direct society towards the kinds of norms and morals and standards that they envisioned for the perfect America. So Hollywood has been heavily involved for a long time, as have all the other film studios around the world, in helping to direct, social consciousness, the perception of our reality, the history of our planet. It's all the same stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not just movies, it's also news. News channels direct us to believe what they want us to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Does
This is
anybody
live,
have
by the
any
way.
questions? Yeah, it
Yeah,
is live.
sorry,
This is not pre-recorded.
Yeah, Puffin had wrote something. So Puffin had wrote, I'm writing a book about aliens, angels, ghosts, fairies too. And then wrote, I'll stay 1 more minute if you have any questions, and then wrote, okay, bye. So yeah, unfortunately, that 1 minute must have just been elapsed.
Yeah, he was actually talking about his 2 books. He had the TikTok of Oz, and apparently the Book of Judas. I'm not sure what his point was. He didn't stay long enough to tell us, but that's all right. But does the general audience have any questions about anything we've been talking about, or do you want to bring up something?
So we're just we spoke about objects that are possessed. We spoke about spirits. We spoke about sort of spirit boards, communications with the spirits. We've spoken about the Quran.
Human consciousness. Yep.
Yeah.
How it interacts with the paranormal.
Still a question, Blue Moon, because I know you deal with the Hat Man. So this is more of a personal question that I did want to ask you.
Yeah.
Has anyone done a Ouija board and spoke to a Hat Man in any shape or form, or not just a Ouija board, but any? Has anyone actually spoke to a Ouija board using any kind of device, spirit box, or anything?
Right.
Or is there no
a lot
communication?
Yeah. So that's one of the consistent details about the Hat Man entity. It's been seen around the world by millions of people from every culture and race and age. And uniformly, it's described as being somewhere between 8 and 10 feet tall, completely dressed in black, with a wide-brimmed hat of some type. And there's about 8 different versions of this thing that people see. And one of the consistent details is that it has glowing eyes, usually glowing red eyes, but people have also reported yellow, green, and white. Now, I've never, in the thousands of accounts that we have, and you can read those accounts from all over the world at thehatmanproject.com. That's one word, thehatmanproject.com. That's where our entire archive of stories is kept. Now, for myself, I conduct a scientific examination of the hundreds of surveys that we are taking about people's personal experiences with the Hat Man. So if you have seen it and you would like to take the survey and add to our research, you can go to my TikTok channel, Project Umbra, and you will find a video there discussing the Hat Man survey along with the address for where you can go and do that. Now, no one has ever reported trying to summon the Hat Man. That's one of the consistent details that the survey data has showed. It's over 100 questions, so it's quite extensive. But what has often happened is that people will be doing something with a Ouija board, or they will be involved in the negative paranormal in some way, or more consistently, they'll have a lot of trauma or drama or upset going on in their life, and this thing shows up. Yes, Jane, thank you. I will definitely talk about the Dybbuk boxes. And so that has been a consistent thing, is that people are looking for the darkness and it finds them. The Sandman is different creature, Rick. It's or that is a different entity that people have reported seeing, and I don't know much about it. But the Hat Man is consistent, and it's one of those things that is often kind of gaslit and blown off as like sleep apnea or a medical condition or psychosis of some sort. But the numbers don't lie. And I personally saw this thing. I was 26 years old. I don't know if anybody wants to hear this. Maybe we should ask the audience. Would anybody like to hear about my personal account with the Hat Man? My sister and I had it together, as a matter of fact. Hello, Mr. David Schrader. Hello. Thank you very much. So
just
I was
before
26
you tell
years.
your story, sorry, just before,
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, honey.
just to understand, from because you sort of described it as a 8 to 10 foot person type thing, but is it a shadow or is it 3-dimensional, or is it 3-dimensional but a shadow?
So it is absolutely and completely black, and often people see it. It is a solid form. Now, shadow people, which are literally that, just shadows of people or animals that are on the walls, are often seen before the Hat Man is observed. It usually shows up by itself. But but for myself, I can tell you that when we saw the Hat Man, it was solid. It had mass. It had intelligence. And it had an agenda that was not okay. It was 3D. It was as solid as we are. So what happened was, I was 26 and my sister was 16. And within a 3-year span, we had lost our mom and dad, all of our immediate family members, my grandmother, my grandfather, aunt and uncle, and I personally had lost my first husband and my 6-month-old child to an asshole drunk driver. And so my sister and I were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Portland, Oregon. And we were poor, we were grieving, we were in incredible pain. We weren't drinking, we were not doing drugs, we were not involved in the occult, we weren't doing anything to bring this experience to us. We were just incredibly heartbroken and grieving and trying to survive. So I was the merchant marine on the river, and what that means is I carried people and cargo up and down the rivers as auxiliary support for the U.S. Coast Guard. So I am a healthy physical woman. If you offer me violence is something you're going to get in return in excess. I am not afraid. I am not the one. So my sister and I are living in this 2-bedroom apartment. We are alone. We have lost our hometown because we're small town people, but we had to move to Portland, Oregon to survive because I had to work and support us both because everybody was dead. So we're 2 girls living in a small, cheap apartment in Portland, Oregon, trying to survive. We're grieving. And one night, my sister and I had bedrooms that were right next to each other. And we always kept our bedroom doors open. That way, if something was going on, we could hear the other person. And I always kept the nightlight in the bathroom turned on so that my sister, who was still young, she's 16, if she needed to get up and use the bathroom or something, she could do that without having to, disturb me or anything. So the bathroom light was always on, and it was right next to her bedroom, and the doors were wide open. So I am minding my own damn business. I'm sound asleep. And I hear my sister say my name, and she screamed it just once. Now listen, anybody who's out there who has a parent will know what I'm saying. When I say, if your child cries out for you in a certain way, you know something's wrong. They are hurt. They are terrified. It's real. They're not faking. And I heard her call my name once. Now, My sister and I have always been very close, and a mild form of telepathy has always been present in our family. My mom and I used to finish each other's sentences. My sister and I can be hundreds of miles apart, and we'll call each other at the same time. We'll even make the same thing for dinner without having spoken all day. It's crazy. So it's always been a thing for us. It's normal for a lot of our H-negative blood types. So I heard her scream my name once. I get up out of bed, and folks, I'm flying. Okay, I'm wide awake. I'm not walking. I'm not strolling. I am running, dead center, running for my sister's room. And I go down the short little hallway, and I go around the corner to go into her room. And I am not shitting you. Listen, the door was wide open, okay? There was no obstruction in the doorway. I got thrown back by nothing, by absolutely nothing, so damn hard, I lost my breath. Because the wall was right behind me. It wasn't very far. It was a cheap little apartment. I got slammed into the wall behind me. And what I saw in my sister's room was this 8 to 10 foot solid black man. Not as in a African American person, but as in a figure that was totally made of darkness. That thing was so black and so solid. It stood out from the darkness of the room, okay? And the most horrific thing was it had glowing red eyes. I know how this sounds. I do. But I know what I saw, and I saw what it did. We were not drunk. We were not using drugs. We were not into any weird occult practices. We were doing nothing. We were grieving and trying to live. This thing was male. It was wearing a wide-brimmed black hat that looked like the 1940s Gestapo fedora hat, like Dick Tracy would wear, the detective hat. And it had on a solid black trench coat that went all the way to the ankles. It was just huge. This thing crouched when I came into the doorway and bounced off of nothing, and it slammed me into the wall behind it. I was frozen, like Spider-Man stuck to the wall. I could not move. I see my sister in her bed with her sheets up to her nose. All I can see is the white of her eyeballs. She can't move. She is frozen. And this thing turns around as I bounce off the nothing in the doorway and slams me into the wall. It hisses at me. And there's this weird, brief sort of empathic connection where I didn't get any words, but I could feel. And this thing was the most overwhelming evil. I did not know anything or anybody could hate that much. I swear to God, I had no idea that kind of evil was even possible. It absolutely hated us, like we owed that thing money, like we ran over its damn dog. It hated us, and it was there to kill us. It wasn't hanging out, and it wasn't observing. It wanted us dead, and it was pissed that I had interrupted it because it did not expect me to be there. And I think that this goes down to electromagnetic frequency, because based on the thousands of reports we've had about this thing, it seems to have an area of effect where it can block out sound, and we know that with the correct EMF frequency, you can paralyze somebody and create physiological and neurological effects. I think that's where that sleep paralysis thing comes in, and that's why we couldn't move. It's a psionic ability. Anyway, I'm sorry, it's a stressful thing for me to talk about, but this is important. So anyway, it hated us. It was pissed off that it was interrupted. It was there for a mission. It was there to kill us. There was no doubt in my mind we were going to die. My sister will tell you the same damn thing. And it turned away and it jumped, like it leapt at my sister. And she was all I had left, okay? She was the only thing I had left in this world. And I know how crazy this sounds, but I knew if we were dying, we were going together. And I really think that that speaks to the testament of love. Because I know that I'm describing this slowly, but this happened like boom, 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 like within seconds, like within minutes. It was the craziest thing. And somehow I pushed off of the back wall. It's kind of, I think, like, you hear stories about someone's child being stuck under a car and mom gets like that super rush of adrenaline and lifts the car. I think it was kind of like that because her and I both knew we were dead. So I pushed off the wall behind me, trying to go through the doorway, and it was like trying to go through thick, heavy air. It was incredible. It was hard. I mean, I've never experienced anything like that. I couldn't hear anything, and we lived on a major street in a major city. There was noise outside all the time, and we could hear nothing. And I got through the doorway just as I see this Hat Man thing leaping on top of my sister, who is frozen in bed, and she can't move. And then, and I can't even express to you enough. Now listen, I didn't hear the voice of God, okay? I didn't see any angels, all right? But I'll tell you what I did see. I saw the most fantastic, brilliant, pure white light. It was like a nuclear blast went off in the room, and it was coming from like the right-hand side of the room where the Hat Man had been jumping on top of my sister to attack. That light exploded. It was so bright. I threw up my arm over my eyes because it was blinding, and I turned to the left towards the cinder block wall, which is just a cheap concrete wall that divided our bedrooms. It was so bright. I could see through the micro cracks in that wall into my room. I know how it sounds. And there was this brief empathic, thank you, Carol Ann, you know how hard it is. There was this brief empathic connection where the Hat Man suddenly went, oh shit, and it was gone. Like, it was terrified, absolutely terrified of whatever that white light was. That white light just took it out. Boom. The Hat Man was gone. The white light was gone. But what remained was this overwhelming sense of peace and love. Like, everything was okay. And my sister and I were completely light blind for like 15 minutes. Okay, like if you've ever had a Polaroid camera or somebody else take a photograph right in your face that was so bright that it temporarily blinded you, we were like that for 15 minutes. We couldn't see anything. We're stumbling around screaming, did you see that? We can't even see each other. We're trying to put clothes on. So after about 15 minutes, the minute we could see, we bundled each other up. We hauled ass out of the apartment and went to a restaurant down the road and stayed there until 10 a.m. the next morning because we were too scared to go back to our apartment. And thank God I've never seen it since. But this is what Project Oprah is about. This is what the Hat Man Project is about. And there is a movie being made by Village Roadshow Pictures, the same folks who made the Matrix series. They're making a movie based off Pastor Timothy Brown Jr.'s research and my own research, Blue Moon Sigma, about the Hat Man phenomenon. Because, as I say, millions of people all over the world have seen this thing. So, I hope that didn't bore anybody too much. Thank you for the likes and the shares. It's a stressful story to tell because it is my nightmare to share, but that is what inspired me because it's attacking children. It's attacking families. We have accounts of people going missing, children going missing after seeing this thing. As a matter of fact, a lot of the phenomenon that happens with the Hat Man entity also happens at Skinwalker Ranch, and it also happens in David Paulides' series, The Missing 411. So there is phenomenon there from all of those things, Skinwalker Ranch, the Hat Man, and the missing, that seem unrelated, but it's the same behavior and the same pattern. So it's pretty compelling. I don't know when the movie is coming out. I think it's 2025. is when the movie The Hat Man Project is going to be coming out, so look for it. But that is my villain origin story.
And if you've
I
got
hope nobody got bored.
if you've got any similar stories, Blue Moon would love you to follow her and let her know.
Yes, please. I do have a scientific survey that we've designed, and we are interviewing people that take the survey because their story might be featured in the movie. Remember, it's a documentary. It's not a fictional movie. And so we're still collecting data because there is a lot of stuff about the Hat Man experiences that echo alien abductions, that echo, demonic encounters. We don't know what we're dealing with, but we know that it's intelligent and it's real. And that's why the work is important, because a lot of people have experienced a thing, but they're scared to talk about it because they don't want to be ridiculed. Who does? But it's happening to a lot of kids. And so if your children are telling you that there is something coming out of the closet or coming out from under the bed, please do not blow them off, because they are experiencing something that grown-ass adults have experienced, and it is absolutely terrifying. So you can go to my TikTok channels, either Blue Moon Sigma 2 or Project Umbra, and you can watch videos about this subject, the Hat Man, and also my other work about Rh negative medical blood type. And you can, there is a video there with the survey information on it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Embla. You've had a similar incident.
I had a similar incident myself with my son, but I was letting you go, but I had very similar with my son. But at the time,
I want to hear it.
The Hat Man actually, it's very distressing for me. But I heard my son scream out, and as you said, your child's voice, and for everybody that was here, we've had this go through 3 generations. My father seen the Hat Man, I seen the Hat Man,
it's multi-generational.
and then I seen the Hat Man again with my son, and my son picked up. The Hat Man actually had my son in his arms when my son screamed out, and I went flying down the passage. I got knocked back by an unknown force too, but lucky I didn't hit a wall or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up, and I don't know what happened before I got back to the door, but the Hat Man was gone before I got back to the door, and my son was on the floor. And I don't know whether, my grandparents or my dad saved him or what, but somebody did and scared the Hat Man out of that room. But I got knocked back by an unknown force and took all the wind out of me. And at the time, I'd just been diagnosed myself with cancer and had a near-death experience. So, it was one of those things that when I got knocked back, it really did do damage. But I'm one of these people that, you touch my kids, you're going to, no matter what, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
no matter how much strength I've got, I find strength. And I ran back to the door, and when I got back to the door, he was on the floor in a ball crying. And, I reckon to this day, if I hadn't have heard his call, he would have been gone. So something saved him, and I reckon, it might have been one of the other family members that come in a good spirit, and got rid of him in some way. So, and my son to this day, and he's now 25, will not sleep without a light on. So
yeah, I can attest to that. I haven't slept well in 30 years, and I don't sleep without a light on. My sister's the same way. Yeah, it's real psychological trauma. It really is. And her and I are both ex-soldiers, okay? And we don't sleep without a light on. So that tells you how real this is. All right?
I'm an ex-soldier.
That's right. And a lot of military have seen this thing. It is multi-generational. It seems to follow certain family and genetic lines. It's a real thing. And I talk to a lot of families and a lot of children about their experiences. And I want to just mention very quickly this. There is a few things that we have learned that seem to counteract the presence of this thing, or to counteract the presence of the negative paranormal. And this is what I recommend to the families and to the ones with the children that are being affected by this thing. Keep a nightlight on in the room, or put a flashlight or a light or something under their bed. something that's not going to keep them awake, but so that there's ambient light in the room. Also, frequency is the key here because that seems to be how this booger gets here. There's something called Soffraggio frequencies, Soffragio, Soffraggio frequencies. You can find them on YouTube in 8 to 10 hour reels of peaceful music, whatever type that you like. We highly recommend that if you are having a lot of negative paranormal in your house, or the Hat Man particularly, that you play music at night, not loud enough to keep anybody awake, but loud enough that the child especially can hear it. There's something about putting that positive frequency of music with those Soffraggio frequencies into the ambient atmosphere of the house or the home or the space. It really does seem to help. So the light is important, the Soffraggio frequency music is important, and the most important thing is, listen, I don't care if you worship purple potatoes, I don't care if you worship whatever God or religious understanding of your choice, so long as it is positively oriented. Whatever your deal is, do a prayer or a meditation or a ritual or something with your kids before bedtime. Because the presence of positive spiritual practice combined with keeping that light on, combined with the frequency of the music really does seem to help, and it really does seem to counteract the negative paranormal. So I just wanted to mention that. And that is actually reflected in the belief systems of a lot of ancient cultures in their individual ways of trying to repel negative paranormal. So I just wanted to put that out there for folks.
I'll just carry on with that a little bit with the light. So my research leads me to the conclusion that spirits or energy beings don't like light, and that's why when people did seances, they had a red light as opposed to a white light. So if you're scared of the dark, I think the consensus was put a white light on, don't turn a red one on, because that doesn't affect the spirits as much as the white light does. Because they're all frequencies.
It's about frequency.
Yeah.
Yeah, because red, colors have frequency. That's, for instance, not to start a bunch of crap out here in TikTok land, but the color blue has recently been a subject of debate because certain areas that recently experienced catastrophic fire, items that were blue were untouched. Well, people don't know this generally, but you can change the frequency settings on lasers to ignore the color blue. So it's about frequency. I think, the color red is a certain frequency as opposed to the color blue or the color white. But in all ancient cultures and practices, the use of light to repel the negative paranormal is consistent, whether you're an Indian in the Amazon jungle or you're a Catholic priest in Rome.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that. I mean, the amount of stories I've heard where the light affects something. So yeah, keep lights on, even though you probably don't want to.
I wanted to answer this question of Yorkshire. Excuse me, that was so bad. Yorkshire UFO hunter. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't hate me. He or she said, "Do you believe that the Hat Man has anything to do with the Vatican?" Or perhaps technology and time travel. That is one theory that we have been working with, is that the Hat Man is some sort of time traveler, either from the future or the past, because there's like 8 different versions of this thing. That is one theory, that some 3-letter agency has found a way to travel through dimensions with frequency or technology, or perhaps is waging a timeline war by interfering. So it's a theory. It's not my theory, but it's one of the theories out there. There's, of course, all the stories about the looking glass device that supposedly the Vatican has that allows them to see the future and the past. That was created by one of their scientists. So who knows? But for myself personally, I think that the Hat Man entity has been visiting this realm for eons because we have found Aboriginal art that resembles a figure that could be interpreted as a hat man. We've found glyphs in the American Southwest desert that could also be viewed that way. There's ancient cultures all over the planet that have different names and descriptions for something that could be interpreted as the Hat Man. So I think it's a paradimensional entity, like I said, that either through technology or psionic ability is able to move through reality for whatever reason. I
Can
just
I
didn't
jump
want to
in
ignore
here?
that question. Yeah.
Can I jump in for a second? Since I've
Please
only got
do.
about 10 minutes, if anyone's
Yeah.
got any questions for me, can they ask them now? Or if you want to pass on any donations to the child, can they do so now? Because
Yes,
I'm going to have to
please.
go very soon.
Yes, and that child is 6 months old. He was incorrectly diagnosed at birth with an eye issue that is now threatening to make him permanently blind. The family has been able to raise quite a bit. They just have a little bit more to go. And they're trying to get that baby over to Europe for a operation that will save his eyesight. So we're asking that all of the donations please be made to the fundraiser for that baby that's listed on the screen. And we'd like to say thank you once again to everybody who has donated to that, to History and Coins. It will be used for that purpose, and we really appreciate the support.
Yes, I really do appreciate the support that's come through. It's been unbelievable today.
Good.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's a shame we didn't get more people, but I think as you say, the way TikTok works is if I look at someone's live and I see they've only got a handful of people, I think it's no good. If they've got 5,000 people listening or watching the live, then you stick around. It's like the old crowd mentality, sort of what's going on over there. There's loads of people there, and if TikTok reduces that because of as we found out earlier, when you had a different figure than what was actually being shown on the phone, then it's a shame.
Yeah, because I'm still seeing it. On my phone, it looks like there's only 38 people here. But when I look at my computer, which I've been keeping updated because it's separate, it shows there's 76. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I do know that this app has a really bad history of censoring people and manipulating algorithms based on who knows what. But the struggle is real, people. The more your creator is censored, probably the cooler stuff they're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just thinking we could do a test and ask everyone to suddenly just type, here, and then count how many people's there and see which one was correct. Sorry, that's just my bad way of thinking.
I know it. I wish that I knew somebody who was a hack master that could, figure out what the heck the problem is with both of our accounts, because I know mine is censored and so is yours, but I don't know anybody. I don't have any way to deal with that.
Well, I'm an ethical hacker. I've actually got a master's degree in cybersecurity, ethical hacking.
Do you?
I've got a lot of degrees.
I know you do, girl. I know you do. Well, hey, if you can do anything to help us out, please do, because I remember just last year, every time I'd come onto True Archer History, there'd be well over 1,000 people on Archer History anytime he would do it live. And it's not like his material has changed or anything like that. And now suddenly he's restricted to these really weird low numbers that I just don't think are accurate.
Seems to be 30 now for the last few months.
Yeah, you put the hashtag FYP in your
I don't, but I never did. So unless they've changed the algorithm,
they have changed the algorithm. I got told to put it on whenever I go live because it's one thing that does attract more people to your live.
Okay.
Thank you, Kit Kat, for reminding me of that. So.
Yeah, me too, actually, because I wasn't aware of that. So thank you very much, Kit Kat.
A couple of questions here. Sorry, from the viewers or listeners. I can't pronounce the name. It looks like an alien writing. Are the ones they caught on camera, are they real or fake? So I'm guessing this was something that Blue Moon was talking about. I'm guessing it's the Hat Man, so
The
I
Hat
don't
Man.
know. Yeah.
There was one
Oh,
the
okay.
other day that we had a discussion on, Blue Moon and I
Mm-hmm.
did, about the one in, I think it was Mexico, that they
Yeah.
write their notes and put it in the fire. I believe that one was a projection because of the way it
Mm-hmm.
looked. I reckon they
Yeah.
projected that up there, but you know, it depends, because the one I've
Yeah.
seen myself was in 3D, and a lot of the photos I've seen, that doesn't look like they're 3D. Like the Hat
Right.
Man looks 3D, doesn't look solid, and the one I've seen looks
No.
solid. And there
Yeah.
is fakes out there as well as real ones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was Embla had said, can I please ask a question? Sorry for maybe the repeat, but my family is Rh negative blood type. Is there something about that that attracts the Hat Man? So the phenomenon surrounding the Hat Man, Skinwalker Ranch, the missing 411 people seems to have some real ties to Rh negative blood type. And that is pretty rare. It's 9 to 15% of the planet. A lot of Rh negatives who have seen the Hat Man record or repeat experiences. They're saying that there's a lot of experiences involving kids and pregnancy. A lot of pregnant Rh negative mothers are seeing this thing. So, if this was just happening to a few people, that would be one thing. But it's happening to thousands of people all over the place. And Rh negatives are a pretty rare breed. So for so many of them to be telling me the same things is pretty suspicious. We don't know what attracts the Hat Man, other than it seems to be negativity, like you've got drama going on in your life or abuse of some sort, or you're trying to mess with the occult paranormal, but we don't really know. That's why we're researching, because we're not really sure what is attracting this thing, but we know that it's happening. We know that it's happening. The NSA has actually confirmed that the work of David Paulides of the Missing 411 series and the phenomenon at Skinwalker Ranch are related. Yeah, Scottish. A lot of Rh negatives have seen it. Way too many.
I'm afraid it's coming up to 10, and as you know, I have to put my boy to bed generally.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, no, I've got to go as well,
Yes.
so I'm
Yeah.
sorry that we're going to
Yeah.
have to cut the live probably. So it's about now if we can.
No.
Otherwise we can do what we're
Yeah.
going to do.
Yeah, no,
I'll put
it's
this
been 3
on,
hours, guys. I don't know if you guys realize that. We've been talking for
Yeah.
3 hours and hanging out. This has been fabulous.
Brilliant.
But I
I'll put
appreciate
this
everybody that's coming.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Sue.
I'll put this on YouTube tomorrow, so if anyone has just joined or wants to listen to it again, it will be on YouTube.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. I love listening to your replays. And thanks
Yeah.
again to everybody that donated to History and Coins fundraiser for the little 6-month-old baby that needs eye surgery in order to keep his eyesight. And please follow History and Coins here on TikTok. She has her own channel, and she's going to be doing some lives of her own, are you not?
Yes, I've done one so far, but I'll be doing more, and I'll be doing a lot of Q&A sessions with different people that are involved in different things. Hang on, so we've got a quick question that came in. What kind of entity can
Sure.
push someone down the stairs? Usually,
An asshole entity.
it's usually either a jokester entity or a dark entity that would push you down the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got someone doing that, you need to get a paranormal investigation team in to investigate it properly.
Seriously.
And seriously look into it, because that's dangerous. Yeah. Very dangerous.
Yeah, and I can actually recommend one, Palm Siberia, that could give you a reference to a reputable, experienced paranormal group in your area. The Warren Foundation for Paranormal Research was founded by Ed and Lorraine Warren. And you can look up their website, the Warren Foundation for Paranormal Research. You can contact them, and they will give you a screened and verified and background checked paranormal group who is active in your local area. And that's really important, folks. Don't just let a bunch of people in your house. Make sure that you're working with a reputable paranormal group that does background checks on their members. Uh, you know, don't just grab somebody. Grab the right person. So, I would recommend going through them to find uh, a group of paranormal researchers in your area that are reputable. Either them or TAPS, the TAPS Ghost Hunters International people. They also have a website. They're also very solid people who do background checks and things like that. So, Palm, Siberia, that's what I would suggest, sweetheart.
Yes, I agree. Depending on where you are, like if you're in, I don't know where you are. If you're in Australia, let me know, and I can get you onto a group that check
Oh,
all
there you go.
their people. If you're
Yeah.
over overseas, we can work something out somewhere for you. All right, I'm going to have to go.
Yeah,
Sorry,
send her a
everybody.
DM. Bye, honey.
History and coins.
All right, bye,
Bye.
You have a great
bye.
day.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you. So
Well,
just to
good.
sum up, everybody, Blue
Yeah.
Moon Sigma doesn't just talk about. I can't praise her enough. It doesn't just talk about the subjects we've
Oh,
covered
thanks.
tonight. Honestly, follow her. You won't regret it. She deals with, especially, something that I'm kind of not close to, but the RH negative does cross over on my research, so it's
It
not
does.
a normal blood type, and she will explain so much more about it. I would never try and say what she said about it.
Thank
So
you.
do follow her, please.
Yeah, the Project Umbra and Blue Moon Sigma 2 here on TikTok, there are videos about the scientific research going on about the Hat Man with the Hat Man Project and Project Umbra, as well as videos about Rh negative blood type research, medical, factual information that can help you. So, yeah, feel free to check that out. And thank you for the likes and the shares and the follows. I appreciate that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for inviting me in, Blue Moon.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. You're the best. I hope you have a wonderful night and give your boy a big hug for me.
God bless you. And thank you to all the people listening in and all the people that liked and obviously gave donations as
Uh,
well to the history and coins that is for the little boy.
yes. Yeah, for that sweet little baby. Thank you so much, everybody. Good
Thank
night.
you. All right. No, everybody. Thank you.
Everybody. Bye.